it's not. Might as well just start. All right, so we should be going live now. Let me see. Yeah, we're live.
Cool. Where do I see the chat, though?
I'll send you a link. It's going to be different. I mean, you could go to YouTube and get the pop-out chat, but I'll put it in the doc.
Okay, I'll look in the doc. Thank you. Hi, chat. Sorry for tonight.
Hey, guys.
Restream's down, so we can only stream to one channel, and so we're going to have to go to YouTube because it's our largest audience, so we're sorry about that. And then we can't even tell people really well why that's happening or anything like that.
It's some kind of tech issue.
Discord. I'll ping the Discord, too.
Okay.
Get it.
This is the link, the YouTube chat pop-out?
Yeah.
Okay.
It should be. Just
All right. Sorry about that, guys. Can I make it? Can I ambigonate it? Let's see.
all the internet went to
There we
Alex.
go.
Oh, there we go.
Are we ready to get a desk?
All right.
We are ready to get a desk.
God damn it. We
are
gotta
ready
fight
to
that
get a
lawyer
desk.
for that
I will
desk.
fight that lawyer. I have no problem fighting that lawyer.
I know the
they
knowledge fight guy said he looks
he's
like a
got
scrapper.
Whatever, dude. I will fuck that guy up.
Dude, you got I don't have the reach.
I will fucking stone cold fuck anybody up for that desk. I don't care who it is. The Rock.
Doesn't matter.
I will
Does not
fight
matter.
until I die or have the desk.
The desk-
Those are the two options.
Also, we called it.
Yeah, fucking dibs.
Whatever happened to dibsies?
Yeah, if you're not a Chicagoan, you don't get it. You don't even like they're calling me not a Chicagoan. You don't respect dibs.
Oh, does shotgun not mean anything
doesn't
anymore?
mean anything anymore.
What world are we
What
living
is
in?
happening
what
in this
kind
world?
of chaotic anarchy
Terrible
is this?
world.
See, so here's
Terrible world.
what I'm going to do. I'm going to make an on-the-fly blend tonight.
Okay, sounds good.
Because what we've got on our desk, guys, is we've got the bourbon equivalent.
I got to do the thing so people
Yep,
can see.
people
you
can
here,
see.
Tom.
What we've got, guys?
Sorry.
We've got the bourbon equivalent.
Yeah.
You know when you go out to eat and everybody leaves one appetizer and nobody's willing to take the last appetizer?
And then they take them back and they make a sampler platter and bring it to
And they
somebody
bring
else.
it out. By the way, I always take the last one because it's no one else is taking. It's like I'm not letting that go to. That's nonsense.
Also, by the way, I always order the sampler platter.
Yeah, I know, right?
Like I always order the sampler. Who are we crapping?
So we've got Old Granddad. We got just a taste of that. We got Larceny, just a taste. We got tastes of all kinds of stuff. So we're going a little Granddad Cecil, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, that is
We
a
got
little sweet.
Larceny, not as sweet, a little more assertive. We're going to go a little mixy. There we go. It's probably about 50-50. Let's give it a swirl.
Give it a swirl. It's going to be a blend.
Swirl
Give it a
for
try.
an authenticity. Let's
Give
try.
it a try.
I don't think that's the best of all worlds. I don't.
You're going to choke it down, but
I am gonna. That's not the best of all worlds.
Yeah.
That really.
you kind of have to be a guy who knows how to blend whiskey to blend whiskey.
So,
Tom.
in case you're wondering if 50% roughly Larceny and 50% Old Granddad, that's just, it just tastes cheap. See, so it just tastes like it brought out the worst notes of both of them. It tastes cheap and bad. Anyway, Ian, how you feeling, buddy? How's the
Ian,
COVID, bro?
How's the COVID going, bud?
I still have it. I'm still positive. I was feeling better, and now I'm feeling worse, and I don't know.
Yeah, they call that lung COVID.
Oh no! Oh, your insurance policy will
Great,
cover
thanks.
that through.
Yikes! Yikes.
No, that sucks, man. I'm
really
sorry. You
does. It
sound
really
better.
does. Yeah.
Well, in the sense that
Yeah,
your
I do.
voice is back to its normal irritating tone, is what I mean. You don't have the the delightful baritone you were
Brutal.
rocking last week.
Brutal. Yeah, your buddy needs to come in and do all your voice lines.
Fine. I recorded an ad with it already, so with my sickness, so.
Monetize your illness.
Super great. Super.
You know what
great.
we should do? We should have a one of these days we should do our YouTube when the fucking internet works again, where all the super chats go to Ian's fucking COVID
I
bills.
was gonna say, so we're not streaming next week, but we will be streaming the following week, and we can maybe do it then. Maybe we could do we split it down the middle. We gave half to Sarah, half to Ian.
Yeah.
And then we'll cover the 30% that Google takes.
Right. Yeah. That'll be
And that'll be what we throw in.
Yeah. We got to do that. We'll
And
do
Sarah
another.
doesn't have COVID.
What's that?
Sarah doesn't have COVID.
Hey,
yeah,
look,
but she has the same shitty non-insurance
If
from
she
us.
wants this money, she better get it. So I'm just saying.
Hey, Sarah, go lick Ian or whatever.
You gotta go beat the COVID final boss. All right, I'm keeping this restream up just so we could keep watching it in case we want to go live
it goes
on the
up,
other
yeah.
thing. That sucks so bad that it doesn't work.
I
though.
know.
Sorry to Twitch people and the other people. I hope that I suspect. Hey, Ian, can you just go to the Twitch chat and type in that we are on YouTube only? That way we can grab people from over here. We're gonna watch this the January 6th hearing that happened. I did not get an opportunity to even look at it today.
No, same.
But I did see the final ending of it because that was posted as a news story while I was on the train. So I did see the final
And
ending.
I did sneak a peek while you were going to grab a card or something at the front page of the Times. So I know, but I don't want to spoil it. So I'm not even gonna.
No spoilers. I'm gonna keep Restream up. It's our hope that I don't know if we can like relaunch if they fix things. I don't know.
Oh, no.
But we'll see. I'm glad we pay money for that. That's super great. Oh no, we're doing the COVID fund next week, but we'll save this. We'll save this money for Ian. Go ahead, Tom.
9.
Get it out.
God, I know.
Let it out, Tom.
Oh, God.
Let it out. Let your
11.
sneezings
shit.
out.
All right, who had 11? That was pretty good.
I know it's a lot. It's
a lot.
so many.
It's a lot. We're gonna do this. Don't save your pennies. Don't give it to us this week. Give it to us not this week's the following week. We're not gonna be here next week though, because Tom and I are gonna take the week off. We're going out to dinner.
We are.
We're gonna go out to
We
dinner
need
on
a
Thursday
break.
night. We need a break.
We need
so
a break.
We're gonna take the week off next week. So we're going out to dinner next week. So
Should we do a top tier cough drop list next week, everybody?
yeah, Ian's gonna run a
Ian,
whole
you
stream.
wanna run the
Ian's
stream?
gonna run a whole stream.
Ian,
so-
do you want to run the
Go ahead,
stream?
Ian, go ahead. It's all you.
Totally will. I totally will. Like the last time you told me to do it, and I was not.
And you didn't do it?
I didn't do it.
God damn it,
I
Ian.
thought about it.
We should,
I thought
it should be
about it.
Ian and
You know,
Sarah.
Ian, that counts. It counts that you thought about it. It counts
Thank
that you
you.
thought about it. I got this week. I want to show it. I don't know if people can see it. I'm going to see if people can see it.
Tier list.
So on here, I have this button that someone gave me. A friend of mine, James, gave this to me, and it's hard to see. You probably can't see it. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's a weasel or a ferret with a snake in its mouth, and it says, "I'll tread anywhere I please." And I think
I
it's
love
pretty
it.
amazing. So a friend of mine, Jamie, gave that to me. So pretty happy with it. Okay, so why don't we start? It's 10 after. We got to get going. We got to get started on this. Ian, let us know if we have to switch or if things switch up or something. Hopefully this stream can be
People want an Ian stream.
reshot. And we're going to give you one in a couple weeks. And they want a Sarah
But an
stream
Ian
more than
only
they want-
stream.
They
They want an Ian, like where Ian does the stream. Look at that.
Go ahead, Ian.
Yeah.
Yeah, invite
Ian.
Sarah on.
Okay.
Ian,
Yeah,
you
have
can
fun.
do it, buddy.
Have fun, buddy. Okay, so here we go. We're going to start playing I got to do the PC thing. I pressed it and it didn't work. I did. Oh, there we go.
I'll do it.
Okay. So now I got to call up the hearing.
Good afternoon.
Can you hear that,
May
Ian?
God bless the United States of America.
Everybody can hear it.
All right, here
too.
we go.
4 months ago, this committee started to present.
Hold on now.
God, it's been fun.
Can you move me to the center so I'm not, or a little closer to Tom so we're not covering the lady who's doing the sign language?
Well,
Oh,
we
you
have
got
the-
it.
we have-
Oh, you got her.
yeah,
You got
we're-
her. You got it. Okay.
Our findings to you, the American people. From the beginning, we understood that some people watching those proceedings would wrongly assume that the committee's investigation was a partisan exercise. That's why I asked those who were skeptical of our work to simply to listen to the evidence, to hear the testimony with an open mind, and to let the facts speak for themselves before reaching any judgment. Over the course of these hearings, the evidence has proven that there was a multi-part plan led by former President Donald Trump to overturn the 2020 election. Donald Trump lost his bid for re-election, as shown from the testimony of some of the president's closest allies and advisors. Donald Trump knew he lost.
Fucking A, did.
Despite this
Yep.
knowledge, Donald Trump went to court to contest the 2020 election, and he lost in court. The Electoral College met
You
and
could say he's a
declared Joe
giant
Biden
loser.
the winner.
What's
Yet
that?
You
Donald
could say he's a
Trump
giant
continued to
loser.
pull
Yeah,
out
right? Yeah.
all the stops in his attempt to stay in power.
He lost a lot.
What Donald Trump
He lost
proceeded
every way
to
you can
do
lose.
after the 2020
kept
election
losing.
is something no president has done before in our country.
He lost so much he
In a
was tired of
staggering
losing.
betrayal of his oath, Donald Trump attempted a plan that led to an attack on a pillar of our democracy. It's still hard to believe. But the facts and testimony are clear, consistent, and undisputed. How do we know this? How have we been able to present such a clear picture of what took place? Because of the testimony we've heard and that we have presented to you through these proceedings, because of the documentary evidence we've gathered and also made available directly to you, the American people. When you look back at what has come out through this committee's work, the most striking fact is that all this evidence come almost entirely from Republicans. The evidence that has
It's true,
emerged did not come from Democrats or opponents of Donald Trump. Instead, look at who's written and testified and produced evidence. Who has that been?
Rhinos.
Aides who've worked loyally for Donald Trump for years, Republican state officials and
Rhinos.
legislators,
Right. They're all rhinos.
Republican electors,
Deep state
the
rhinos.
chairwoman
Rhinos.
of the Republican National Committee,
Rhino.
political professionals who worked at the highest levels of the Trump campaign,
Right.
Double
Rhinos.
rhinos.
Trump appointees who served in the most senior positions in the Justice Department, President Trump's staff and
Okay, when you
closest
say it like
advisors
that, it
in
sounds
the White
bad.
House, members of the President
It's almost like they're
Trump's
building a
family,
case against him. Oh my
his
God.
own White House counsel. I've served in Congress a long time. I can tell you it's tough for any congressional investigation to obtain evidence like what we've received, least of all such a detailed view into a president's inner circle. And I want to be clear, not all these witnesses were thrilled to talk to us. Some of them put up quite a fight, but ultimately the vast majority cooperated with our investigation. And what we've shown you over the last 4 months has been centered on the evidence that has come overwhelmingly from Republican witnesses. So I say to you again, as I did in June, this investigation is not about politics. It's not about party.
I love
It's
his
about
tie.
the facts, plain
That
and
tie is
simple.
great.
Fucking
And it's
dope.
about making sure our government functions under the rule of law as our Constitution demands. Today, as in previous proceedings, my colleagues and I will present new evidence. That includes new testimony from additional Republicans who served in the Trump administration, never before seen footage of congressional leaders on January 6th working to coordinate the response to the violence and ensure the people's business went forward. New materials produced to the committee by the Secret Service, details about the ongoing threat to American democracy. Today's proceeding will also be grounded in the facts, but it won't look exactly like all our other hearings. We'll also take a step back and look at the evidence in a broader context, providing a summary of key facts we've uncovered. Facts relevant to former President Trump's state of mind, about his motivation, and about his intent.
What about the
did
plate of
President
ketchup he
Trump
threw
know?
against the wall?
What was he told? What was his personal and substantial role in the multi-party?
Can I just stop here for a second and tell you how fucking delighted I am that they had testimony about his tantrums?
I know.
Like how delightful that is. Like how beautiful that is.
I know.
To just show how petty and shitty of a person he is. And they went out of their way to go find people who knew he threw tantrums and they were like, tell us about his
I know,
fucking
man.
giant
Yep.
baby man tantrums.
Remember when he fucking lost his shit?
Remember when he stomped his foot and threw his plate of ketchup against the wall? What a fucking child. Man.
plan to overturn the election. For those of you who've watched our prior hearings, some of this evidence will look familiar. For those of you tuning in for the first time, we'll summarize some of the most important facts, and we'll urge you to go online and watch our hearing in full.
Look at that.
There's one more difference about
Yeah.
today.
Try it.
Pursuant to the notice circulated prior to today's proceedings, we are convened today not as a hearing, but as a
God bless.
formal committee business meeting, so that in addition to presenting evidence, we can potentially hold a committee vote on further investigative action based upon that evidence. Before we get to that evidence, I'd recognize our distinguished Vice Chair, Ms. Cheney of Wyoming, for any opening statement she'd care to offer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Much has happened since our last public hearing on July 21st. As the chairman mentioned, we've received new and
She's a Democrat now. She's wearing blue.
That's how it works. I like who's on the phone. Who's just like checking their fucking Twitter
That's
or
that
whatever.
fucking Muscly McMuscleson. The
Is
guy
that Adam
who's always
Kinzinger? Yeah, the guy who's like, hold on, let me check my phone. Boo! If anyone needs me, I'm just in this suit at the moment. Let me get my phone out. Boo! Where's the Congress? Is it over there?
Oh, we got pizza. There's a pizza floating over there. Tom, we got to get a pizza. I'm going to turn this back on, though, because she's just talking. Thank you for the pizza.
Look at that.
We're going to eat away from the mics, we promise. I may take a corner, so we'll see.
voluminous
eaten
documentation
all
from
day
the
either.
Secret Service, which we continue to analyze.
You guys just have to deal
We've
with it.
received new witness
Pizza got delayed,
testimony,
guys.
including about
We got
efforts
late.
to
We got
obstruct
going
our
late.
investigation and conceal key facts. And
Corner
according to
piece.
public reporting, the Department of
I'm
Justice
gonna
has
eat a
been
lot.
very active in pursuing many of the issues identified in our prior hearings. Our committee may ultimately decide to make a series of criminal referrals to the Department of Justice, but we recognize that our role is not to make decisions regarding prosecution. The preamble to our Constitution recites among its purposes to, quote, establish justice. And our nation's judiciary and our U.S. Department of Justice have that responsibility. A key element of this committee's responsibility is to propose reforms to prevent January 6th from ever happening again. We've already proposed and
There will never be another January 6th.
We've actually canceled that date. The calendar date is gone.
Right from
We're
5
just not
to
doing
7.
it. Yep.
the
It's
House
like the
has
fucking
now
13th
passed a
floor
bill
on a
to amend the
building.
Electoral Count Act to help ensure that no other future plots to overturn an election can succeed. And we will make further specific recommendations in our final report, based in part on the evidence you will hear today. Our hearings last summer began with an outline of President Trump's multi-part plan to overturn the 2020 presidential election. We then proceeded to demonstrate each of these elements in detail, with more than 20 hours of evidence. Today, we will see new evidence, but as the chairman said, we will also synthesize evidence you've seen before. The vast weight of evidence presented so far has shown us that the central cause of January 6th was one man, Donald Trump, whom many others followed. None of this would have happened without him. He was personally and substantially involved in all of it. Exactly how did one man cause all of this? Today, we will focus on President Trump's state of mind,
Fragile
his intent,
ego.
his motivations, and how he spurred others to do his bidding, and how another January 6th could happen again if we do not take necessary action to prevent it. As you view our evidence today, I would suggest a focus on the following points. First, as you will see, President Trump had a premeditated plan to declare that the election was fraudulent and stolen before Election Day, before he knew the election results.
He said it!
He made his stolen election claims on election night against the advice of his campaign without any evidence.
Steve Bannon, the last bit of tape they played in the last episode of this, Steve Bannon said as much. He said he was going to lie about it.
Yeah, I mean, and they telegraphed this literally months in advance. Hey, if I lose, I'm going to say it's
Yeah.
rigged.
He literally said he was going to do it, and Bannon said that's the plan from the beginning.
Right.
So I'm going to move the chat over here so I can at least see it. Give me a sec, guys. Jesus Christ, Tom.
Knocking shit over.
What is happening? Here we go. I got to move this. Cool.
There's no way anyone can hear me on mic. I'm sure.
I know you're not even mic'd anymore.
Okay.
in hand. Then, over the next 2 months, he sought to find those who would help him invent and spread lies about the widespread fraud. Many of those who stepped forward to help, including Rudy Giuliani, knew.
I know you people are curious about corner pieces. Tavern cut is the superior cut of pizza. Look it up. That's all I'm saying.
They never had real evidence sufficient to change the election results. And on the evening of January 5th, they admitted they were still trying to find that phantom evidence. Of course, as a result of making intentionally false claims of election fraud, Mr. Giuliani's license to practice law has now been suspended. Second, please recognize that President Donald Trump was in a unique position, better informed about the absence of widespread election fraud than almost any other American. President Trump's own campaign experts told him that there was no evidence to support his claims. His own Justice Department appointees investigated the election fraud claims and told him point blank they were false. In mid-December 2020, President Trump's senior advisors told him the time had come to concede the election. Donald Trump knew the courts had ruled against him. He had all of this information, but still he made the conscious choice to claim fraudulently that the election was stolen, to pressure state officials to change election results, to manufacture fake electoral slates, to attempt to corrupt our Department of Justice, to summon tens of thousands of supporters to Washington. Knowing that they were angry, knowing that some of them were armed, he sent them to the Capitol. Then, as the riot was underway, he incited his supporters to further violence by publicly condemning his vice president. And then he refused for hours to disband his rioting supporters and instruct them to leave the Capitol, even when he was begged repeatedly to do so. None of this is normal or acceptable or lawful in our republic. Third, please consider today who had a hand in defeating President Trump's efforts to overturn the election. Vice President Pence, Bill Barr, Jeff Rosen, and others at the Department of Justice. State Republican officials, White House staff who blocked proposals to mobilize the military to seize voting machines and run new elections. Our Capitol Police, aided by the Metropolitan Police, other federal law enforcement, and our National Guard, who arrived later in the afternoon. All of these people had a hand in stopping Donald Trump. This leads us to a key question. Why would Americans assume that our Constitution and our institutions in our republic are invulnerable to another attack? Why would we assume that those institutions will not falter next time? A key lesson of this investigation is this: our institutions only hold when men and women of good faith make them hold, regardless of the political cost. We have no guarantee that these men and women will be in place next time. Any future president inclined to attempt what Donald Trump did in 2020 has now learned not to install people who could stand in the way. And also, please consider this. The rulings of our courts are respected and obeyed because we as citizens pledge to accept and honor them. Most importantly, our president, who has a constitutional obligation to faithfully execute the laws, swears to accept them. What happens when the president disregards the court's rulings as illegitimate, when he disregards the rule of law? That, my fellow citizens, breaks our republic. Finally, as you view the evidence today, also consider this. President Trump knew from unassailable sources that his election fraud claims were false. He admitted he had lost the election. He took actions consistent with that belief. Claims that President Trump actually thought the election was stolen are not supported by fact and are not a defense. There is no defense that Donald Trump was duped or irrational. No president can defy the rule of law and act this way in a constitutional republic, period. Mr. Chairman, our nation's federal judges are sworn to do impartial justice, to preserve our Constitution and preserve our Union. Dozens of these judges have been addressing January 6th cases, and many have given us plain, unmistakable warnings about the direction of our republic. Let me read from one judge's statement given at a recent sentencing hearing. Quote, "High-ranking members of Congress and state officials who know perfectly well the claim of fraud was and is untrue, and that the election was legitimate, are so afraid of losing their power they won't say so. It has to be crystal clear that it is not patriotism, it is not standing up for America, to stand up for one man who knows full well that he lost, instead of the Constitution he was trying to subvert." Mr. Chairman, the violence and lawlessness of January 6th was unjustifiable. But our nation cannot only punish the foot soldiers who stormed our Capitol. Those who planned to overturn our election and brought us to the point of violence must also be accountable.
Hell yeah, man.
With every effort to excuse or justify the conduct of the former president, we chip away at the foundation of our republic.
Because, like, the guy at
Indefensible
the bottom is
conduct is
always the one that eats
defended,
shit.
inexcusable conduct is excused. Without accountability, it all becomes normal, and it will recur.
She's really hammering this point home time and time again. And it's I think the reasoning behind this is because she is, she was taken out of power, right? So she's removed from power.
Right.
And you're seeing places across the country sort of fall into this, election disrepair, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's, like all over the country, the different places. I think, this is the last bang of the drum.
It is. And I think that, really, it's really important that, we haven't held anybody important culpable.
Yeah. It's only people not,
It's
not
like the
important.
foot soldier. It's
Yeah.
like, fuck you. Like, if I go to war,
Yeah.
the fucking general's in charge. The lieutenants are in charge. The corporals, the majors. It's not the fucking grunt on the ground. Like, yes, are they culpable? They are 100% culpable, 100%.
Yeah.
Fucking, let's hold their feet to the fire. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But who was in charge?
Yeah,
Who
man.
led the battle? Who was sounding the rallying cry?
We're in this position where it's got to get to somebody important eventually.
Yeah.
And watching Bannon get led away in handcuffs recently.
Oh,
beautiful,
wonderful.
it's gorgeous. It's beautiful.
So as we watch the evidence today, please consider where our nation is in its history. Consider whether we can survive for another 246 years. Most people in most places on earth have not been free.
246 days.
America is an exception. And America continues only because we bind ourselves to our founders' principles, to our Constitution.
Thanks for the super chat, Mike.
We recognize that some principles must be beyond politics, inviolate, and more important than any single American who has ever lived. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Without objections, the chair recognizes the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Lofgren, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very shortly after the election, we begin this meeting by returning to election night, November 3rd, 2020. As the chairman noted, we've previously presented testimony about how the election results were expected to come in that night. In certain states, ballots cast by mail before Election Day would be counted only after the polls closed that evening. That meant that election results would not be known for some time. Although President Trump's campaign manager, Bill Stepien, House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy, and Jared Kushner had advised Donald Trump to encourage mail-in voting by Republicans, President Trump did not do so.
Yeah, I just remember generally, you had people arguing that we had a very, very robust get out the vote effort and that, mail-in ballots could be a good thing for us if we looked at it correctly.
There was one meeting that was had in particular. I invited Kevin McCarthy.
Thanks for the super chat,
to
Michael.
Join the meeting. He being of like mind on the issue with me. in which we made our case for why we believed mail-in voting, not to be a bad thing for his campaign. But the president's mind was made up.
So it was expected before the election that the initial counts in some states, in other words, those votes cast on election day, would be more heavily Republican. And this would create the false perception of a lead for President Trump, a so-called red mirage. But as the results of the absentee ballots that were later counted, there could be trends towards Vice President Biden as those mail-in ballots were counted. Now, on election night, Donald Trump's advisors specifically told him he didn't have a factual basis to declare victory. He should wait for the remaining ballots to be counted. Here is campaign manager Bill Stepien.
It was far too early to be making any calls like that. Ballots were still being counted. Ballots were still going to be counted for days. And it was far too early to be making any proclamation like that. I believe my recommendation was to say that votes were still being counted. It's too early to tell, too early to call the race.
But President Trump did declare victory in the late hours of election night. Not only did he declare victory, he also called for the ongoing count of votes to just stop. Stopping the count would have violated both federal and state laws and also disenfranchised millions of voters who lawfully cast their vote. He called for that action anyway. Here's what he said.
This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment.
He's
to
so
our
coked
country.
out in this. So coked out.
We were
Oh, yeah,
getting
he
ready
looks
to
nuts.
win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
Frankly, you did not. What a
We
great
won
night that
all
was.
I know.
voting
What a
to
great
stop.
night when he was
Just
panicked.
like panicking.
We now
I know. Yeah,
know
yeah. Uh-huh.
more about President Trump's
he couldn't
intention
string it
for
together.
election night. The evidence shows that his false victory speech was planned well in advance, before any votes had been counted. It was a premeditated plan by the president to declare victory no matter what the actual result was. He made a plan to stay in office before Election Day. Now, the vice president's staff was concerned with what Donald Trump might do on election night. They took steps to ensure that Mr. Pence would not echo a false victory announcement from President Trump. Here's what the vice president's counsel, Greg Jacob, told us about his preparations with the vice president's chief of staff, Mark Short.
Mark had indicated to me that there was a possibility that there would be a declaration of victory within the White House that some might push for. And this is prior to the election results being known. And that he was trying to figure out a way of avoiding the vice president sort of being thrust into a position of needing to opine on that when he might not have sufficient information to do so.
Now, following this conversation, Mr. Jacob drafted a memo to Mr. Short, which the Select Committee got from the National Archives. The memo was sent on November 3rd, Election Day, and advised it is essential that the Vice President not be perceived by the public as having decided questions concerning disputed electoral votes prior to the full development of all relevant facts. A few days before the election, Mr. Trump also consulted with one of his outside advisors.
It sounded like there was a phone ringing in the background.
It did.
Okay. All right. So you heard it too.
Yeah,
Okay.
I heard it. Mm-hmm.
side activist Tom Fitton about the strategy for election night. The Select Committee got this pre-prepared statement from the National Archives. As you can see, the draft statement, which was sent on October 31st, declares, "We had an election today, and I won." And the Fitton memo specifically indicates a plan that only the votes counted by the election day deadline, and there is no election day deadline, would matter. Everyone knew that ballot counting would lawfully continue past election day. Claiming that the counting on election night must stop before millions of votes were counted was, as we now know, a key part of President Trump's premeditated plan. On election day, just after 5 p.m., Mr. Fitton indicated he'd spoken with the president about the statement. Sending along again, just talked to him about the draft below. Again, this plan to declare victory was in place before any of the results had been determined. In the course of our investigation, we also interviewed Brad Parscale, President Trump's former campaign manager. He told us he understood that President Trump...
That guy looks like he just came out of a birth canal.
He does. He's got that Coneheads look.
Right.
For real.
Planned as early as July that he would say he won the election even if he lost.
See?
And
it was there.
Just a few days before the election, Steve Bannon, a former Trump chief White House strategist and outside advisor to President Trump, spoke to a group of his associates from China and said this.
And what Trump's going to do is just declare victory, right? He's going to declare victory. But that doesn't mean he's the winner. He's just going to say he's the winner. The Democrats, more of our people vote early that count. Theirs voted mail. And so they're going to have a natural disadvantage, and Trump's going to take advantage of it. That's our strategy. He's going to declare himself a winner. So when you wake up Wednesday morning, it's going to be a firestorm. Also, if Trump is losing by 10 or 11 o'clock at night, it's going to be even crazier. No, because he's going to sit right there and say they stole it.
Agree.
I'm directing the Attorney General.
It's
to
right
shut
there.
down all ballot places in all 50 states. It's going to be no. He's not going out easy. If Biden's winning, Trump is going to do some crazy shit.
As you know, Mr. Bannon refused to testify in our investigation. He's been convicted of criminal contempt of Congress, and he's awaiting sentencing. The evidence indicates that Mr. Bannon had advanced knowledge of Mr. Trump's intent to declare victory falsely on election night, but also that Mr. Bannon knew about Mr. Trump's planning for January 6th. Here's what Bannon said on January 5th.
All hell is going to break loose tomorrow. It's all converging, and now we're on, as they say, the point of attack.
All right. You ever see the movie The Breakfast Club?
I actually have not seen The Breakfast Club.
Well, then
I'm familiar with it.
This joke doesn't work, then forget it.
I'm sorry.
Forget it.
Right, the point of attack tomorrow.
I'm just saying, he looks, for all you people who have seen The Breakfast Club.
Which is almost everybody.
Which is like everybody.
I just haven't seen
Just imagine whoa, did I go too far? What did I do?
I don't know.
Yeah.
All hell is going
it's
to
not
break
this
loose
picture.
tomorrow. It's all...
Remember the guy who's like the guy with the flannel shirt on who gets his head like caught under the desk when he's biting that girl's vagina? This is that guy all grown up. Guy all grown up. This is him. This is him as an executive telling other people that they need to cut their hair.
converging, and now we're on, as they say, the point of attack, right? The point of attack tomorrow. I'll tell you this. It's not going to happen like you think it's going to happen, okay? It's going to be quite extraordinarily different. And all I can say is strap in. You have made
Caliente.
this happen, and tomorrow it's game day, so strap in.
Title of his sex tape.
And if you want to strap in, you can go to adamandeve.com, type in Gloria checkout, and you can buy strap-ins, strap-ons, whatever you like.
Let's get ready.
Another close associate of Donald Trump, apparently knew of Mr. Trump's intent.
Thanks, Comic, for the super chat. He says, here's $5 to rent the Breakfast Club.
I'm sorry, guys. I've never seen
Roger
most
Stone
of those 80s
is a
movies.
political operative with a reputation for dirty tricks. In November 2019, he was convicted of lying to Congress and other crimes and sentenced to more than 3 years in prison. He's also a longtime advisor to President Trump and was in communication with President Trump throughout 2020.
Look at that piece of fucking pepperoni just sticking off the top of that.
I got to tell you,
Look at that.
this pizza,
Mr. Trump
It's pretty solid. You know, we get this every couple weeks.
It's wonderful.
It's a place called Joe's in what's not St. Charles. It's the other city.
Geneva?
No, it's the Compton Hills, I think, or something like that. It's just a little bit outside.
It's a beautiful.
It's a very, very
pizza.
good pie. Very good pie.
I mean, it's honestly wonderful.
Yeah, we get the double dough because it's a little thicker.
Oh.
It's outstanding.
pardoned Roger Stone on December 23rd, 2020. Now, recently, the Select Committee got footage of Mr. Stone before and after the election from Danish filmmaker Christopher Gilbranson, pursuant to a subpoena. Right before the election, here's Roger Stone talking about what President Trump would do after the election.
Let's just hope we're celebrating. I suspect I really do suspect it'll still be up in the air. But when that happens, the key thing to do is to claim victory. Possession is 9/10 of the law. No, we won. Fuck you. Sorry, over. We won.
That's what he
You're
did.
wrong.
That's
Fuck you.
what he did with Gore.
I said,
Gore Bush.
Let's get right to the violence. That's what I'm doing. It's no point. Time to start smashing pumpkins, if you know what I mean.
How old's Roger Stone?
75.
70. That's a hard 70, bro. I mean, I normally would look at a guy who's 70 and be like, yeah, man, you're 70. That guy looks like he's 80. 100% looks 10 years older. And the
Holy
worst
shit.
10 years. Like, that's the fucking back nine.
That it is.
Like, that's the back nine.
That's like you're tired.
That's
like,
the
you're
back
you're
nine.
It's just it's all grit to get through.
70. Because I was thinking to
70.
myself, I was like, isn't that guy going to die soon? But maybe not.
He does. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a guy who has a Nixon tattoo on his back.
What a piece of shit that guy is.
Ugh. Let's go right to the fuck the voting. I just imagine. I just want to say it out loud again. Fuck the voting. Let's get right to the violence.
Yeah.
Out loud and everything, man.
Out loud and everything. Okay. An Insane Atheist asked, Tom, what about Grease, Heathers, and Lost Boys? Have you seen any of those?
I've seen Grease.
Heathers?
Heathers, I did see.
With Winona Ryder, right? I think it's Winona Ryder.
But I saw it. Haley showed it to me.
Okay, yeah. It's
so I saw it recently.
Yeah. And
Lost Boys is the vampire movie?
Yeah, it's the one with Kiefer Sutherland, I think.
I don't know if I've seen it or if I just know of it.
One of the Coreys is in it too, or maybe both Coreys.
Like a Feldman or
There's
another
a Feldman
one?
or a Ham
Ham.
in it. I'm not sure.
You know, yeah, I have seen Grease. I've definitely seen Grease. I've definitely seen
Lost
Heathers.
Boys so many fucking times. My wife watches it every time it's on television. We've watched so many. I've seen so many episodes. I mean, it's the same episode, but I've seen it over and over. And my wife will watch it every time it's on television.
Like so many.
It's from her childhood. It's plucked from her childhood. And it's one of those things. Goonies too. Whenever it's on our TV.
Yeah, I've never seen Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
That's kind of a shitty movie.
Like a lot of those 80s movies.
Dazed and Confused. You see that one?
No, I don't remember.
They're very similar. So anyway,
I don't remember.
let's watch for this.
Yeah.
We got to watch this.
Select Committee called Mr. Stone.
We could
as a
spend an
witness,
hour talking about
but
movies,
he invoked
but
his
I know.
Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination.
Do you believe the violence on January 6th was justified?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer your question on the basis of the Fifth Amendment.
And Mr. Stone, did you have any role in planning for the violence on January 6th?
Once again, I will assert my Fifth Amendment right to decline to answer your question.
Although we don't yet.
Every time he gets the fifth, someone should punch him in the face, though.
You know, here's the thing.
You get rocked hard in the jaw if you pick the fifth and you're Roger Stone.
Cecil, Did you have any role in planning January 6th?
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Just
though?
whack 'em.
Just some dude. You just get some guy from like the local gym who's like a boxer
Just
who
to
just
pop
stands
him?
there. He's got his fist taped, and as soon as he's like, I plead the fifth, but boom, and then like one of his fucking old ass teeth flies out.
He's just like, you want 5? I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wha-bam!
Here's your Fifth Amendment.
Have all the relevant records of Roger Stone's communications. Even Stone's own social media posts acknowledge that he spoke with Donald Trump on December 27th as preparations for January 6th were underway. In this post, you can see how Roger Stone talked about his conversations with President Trump. He wrote, "I also told the president exactly how he can appoint a special counsel with full subpoena power to ensure those who are attempting to steal the 2020 election through voter fraud are charged and convicted, and to ensure Donald Trump continues as our president." As we know by now, the idea for a special counsel was not just an idle suggestion. It was something President Trump had actually tried to do earlier that month. We know that Roger Stone was at the Willard Hotel on January 5th and 6th, and we know from other witness testimony that President Trump asked his chief of staff, Mark Meadows, to speak with Roger Stone and General Michael Flynn that night. In addition to his connection to President Trump, Roger Stone maintained extensive direct connections to two groups responsible for violently attacking the Capitol, the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys. Individuals from both of these organizations have been charged with the crime of seditious conspiracy. Now, what is seditious conspiracy? It is a conspiracy to use violent force against the United States, to oppose the lawful authority of the United States. Multiple associates of Roger Stone from both the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys have been charged with this crime. Close associates of Roger Stone, including Joshua James, have pled guilty to this crime. We know that at least 7 Oath Keepers who have been criminally charged.
This lady in the corner who's doing the
Sign language?
This is my life. My entire everything I own is covered with like a slight layer of grease, and so like every camera
just, like,
lens is always
schmutzed.
like me opening it, and I didn't realize that I touched it, and so everybody's looking at me and they're like, "Man, are you pixelated, or is that just your giant hand, like greasy hands that made that?" And that's this lady.
Like,
This
no.
lady's my spirit
You're like,
animal.
no, just fucking ooze schmutz.
She's my ASL spirit.
Provided personal security for Roger Stone or were seen with him on January 6th or in the weeks leading up to January 6th. For example, Joshua James, the leader of the Alabama Oath Keepers, provided security for Roger Stone and was with him on January 5th. This is the picture of the two together on January 5th. James entered the Capitol on January 6th. He assaulted a police officer. Earlier this year,
Nobody's
he pled
ever
guilty
looked more
to
villainous.
seditious conspiracy.
He looks like a Dick Tracy villain.
Both of those people look like they're right out of a Batman movie.
For real.
Like you got a villain, and then you have his thug behind him who's ready to fight.
Like you actually don't need to subpoena him. You could just look at his thought bubbles and read them. Are you kidding me? They'll float above his head. Meanwhile,
they throw him in the jail. It just says clink above him.
Conspiracy and obstruction of Congress. Another example is the married couple, Kelly and Connie Meggs. Now, Kelly Meggs was the leader of the Florida chapter of the Oath Keepers. Both he and his wife provided security for Roger Stone, and both are charged with leading a military-style stack attack of Oath Keepers, attacking the Capitol on January 6th. Perhaps even more disturbing is Roger Stone's close association with Enrique Tarrio, the national chairman of the Proud Boys. Roger Stone's connection with Enrique Tarrio and the Proud Boys is well documented by video evidence with phone records the Select Committee has obtained. Tarrio, along with other Proud Boys, has been charged with multiple crimes concerning the attack on January 6th, including seditious conspiracy. During the attack, Tarrio sent a message to other Proud Boys claiming We did that. He also visited the White
Believe
House
people when
on
they say
December
it.
12th.
I mean, it's right there. You said we did it.
Later that day,
I wonder if he fucking
he
did it.
posted a disturbing video claiming credit for the attack. This video, posted on January 6th, was apparently created prior to the attack. This big lie, President Trump's effort to convince Americans that he had won the 2020 election, began before the election results even came in. It was intentional, it was premeditated, it was not based on election results or any evidence of actual fraud affecting the results or any actual problems with voting machines. It was a plan concocted in advance to convince his supporters.
For once, that clearing of the
that
throat
he
wasn't
won.
me.
And the people who seemingly knew about that plan in advance would ultimately play
Sorry, I
a
unmuted.
significant.
Was that you, Ian?
Yeah, sorry, I accidentally unmuted. I don't know. It keeps unmuting me.
That's okay. It's
Did you-
fine. People who listen are used to Tom doing it, so it's not a
Did
big
you
deal.
schmutz your
It
COVID
was
juice
Tom.
into the? Okay.
Yeah, everybody's got COVID now. Congratulations.
It went viral.
significant role in the events of January 6th. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Kinzinger, for an opening statement.
Boom!
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very shortly
The evidence
after the
is
election,
over there.
the Trump campaign recognized that they had likely lost the election, and they
He
informed
just
Donald
got his
Trump of
fucking
that fact.
shoulders cut too small in his suit.
Even before the networks called the race for President Biden on
See how
November
white that
7th,
is?
I know,
his
right?
chances of pulling out a
it's like a
victory were
fish belly.
virtually non-existent, and President Trump knew it.
Do you know if
Stop
anybody ever
flexing.
told the
Jesus
president that he
Christ,
had lost and that there wasn't a chance of him winning?
I know that the president, when the networks called it, of course, he was informed about the network decision.
I wonder if some of these Republicans made a conscious choice to wear the mask like people wear their sunglasses at a
Playing poker.
table.
Yeah.
I wonder if
I bet they
just-
did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hide their reactions and shit.
Right.
Yeah.
That afternoon, at some point, myself and a handful of other folks went over and sat down with the president and communicated that the odds of us prevailing in legal challenges were very small.
You know, after the election, as of
What's the one on the
November
top?
7th, in your judgment, what were the chances of President Trump winning the election?
After that point?
Yes.
It's wonderful. Thank you.
At times, President Trump acknowledged the reality of his loss. Although he publicly claimed that he had won the election, privately he admitted that Joe Biden would take over as president. Here's a few examples of that.
So we're in the Oval and there's a discussion going on. And the president says, I think it could have been Pompeo, but he says words to the effect of, yeah, we lost, we need to let that issue go to the next guy, meaning President Biden.
I remember maybe a week after the election was called, I popped into the Oval just to give the president the headlines and see how he was doing. And he was looking at the TV and he said, "Can you believe I lost to this effing guy?"
Mark raised it with me on the 18th. And so following that conversation, we're the motorcade ride driving back to the White House. And I had said, does the president really think that he lost? And he said, a lot of times he'll tell me that he lost, but he wants to keep fighting it. And he thinks that there might be enough to overturn the election, but he pretty much has acknowledged that he's lost.
Knowing that he had lost and that he had only weeks left in office, President Trump rushed to complete his unfinished business. One key example is this. President Trump issued an order for large-scale U.S. troop withdrawals. He disregarded concerns about the consequences for fragile governments on the front lines of the fight against ISIS and al-Qaeda terrorists. Knowing he was leaving office, he acted immediately and signed this order on November 11th, which would have required the immediate withdrawal of troops from Somalia and Afghanistan, all to be complete before the Biden inauguration on
To
January
create chaos.
20th. As you watch these clips, recall that General Keith Kellogg was the national security advisor to the vice president and had served as chief
Can you
of
hand me
staff
one of those
to
podcast
the National
awards over there?
Security Council for President
Podcast award?
Trump. And General Milley was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the Pentagon.
I'd give you a knife.
Are you familiar with a memo that the president reportedly signed on November 11th, 2020, ordering that troops be withdrawn from Afghanistan and Somalia?
Yes.
Don't break my
So,
potty.
I think you might have seen some things where there's a memo or something. It's
hard to swing
from
Yeah,
Johnny
here-
McAfee
here's the edge of this.
to Douglas McGregor. It says, here's your task, to get the U.S. forces out of
Open it with a
Somalia,
podcast
get the U.S. forces
award.
out of Afghanistan.
When you first interviewed and met Colonel Douglas McGregor, is it fair to say you discussed this decision of withdrawing from Somalia and Afghanistan, correct?
Yeah, I'm sure that was part of it, yeah.
And that was the position that he was taking over there was senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense, is that correct?
Yes.
So on that same day, just so I'm clear, he responded back to you that they, meaning DOD leadership, was not going to take any of those steps without an order.
Without a directive, yeah.
I explained in language that should be in the order while I was in the meeting with McEntee, and this was my answer to him. I said, if you want this to happen, or the president wants this to happen, he's got to write an order.
So you never wrote this down in any capacity?
I sketched on a piece of paper for him.
That guy looks
some
like he's
key
carved out of
statements.
butter.
Yeah, right?
The president directs. This is, what's the right word? Boilerplate language?
Who was in his office drafted the order?
Yo, mama. Oh, sorry.
It was myself and one of my assistants.
I don't know their
McAfee
names.
duly types it up.
My assistants don't even have names.
Did you just scoff at me, Ian, when I said that?
No, I said got him.
Oh, okay. Got him.
But it was kind of like a
It was a scoffy. It was a
Don't be
scoffy.
dismissive.
I get it. I get
Don't
it.
be dismissive,
It's
Ian.
fine. It's fine.
I didn't dismiss.
You're
It was
doing the
just-
next fucking live stream by yourself.
I acknowledge.
This guy, this General Miley looks like somebody flesh-colored Herman Munster and
Yes.
put him up. You know what I mean? Like they went back and put like a little bit of flesh-colored makeup on Herman Munster and let him come back out.
From other
Right? I'm
testimony,
not wrong.
You're not
right?
wrong at
I'm
all.
not wrong.
You're not wrong at all. Yeah, it looks like somebody spray painted a flesh-colored Count Chocula. Like if you took Count Chocula,
1,
2, 3 medals on my chest.
Brings it in to the president. President signs it, and boom, it's over, faxed over, or emailed, scanned over to Caspito, delivers it to me.
Was it by auto pen or was it the president himself signing it?
It was the president.
And who obtained that signature?
I did.
It is odd. It is non-standard. It is potentially dangerous. I personally thought it was militarily not feasible nor wise.
And I
It was odd, non-standard, impossible, and stupid.
Yeah, stupid.
McGregor.
Hold on, Stone Banana. Did you get your prayer clock?
Hey, yeah, that's a good question.
He just said it went off and scared the crap out of him.
Yeah. No, Stone did post something.
Oh,
on Twitter.
how cool
it's
is that?
awesome.
Ours is stuck.
real, y'all.
Ours is stuck. It won't move.
It's 420 forever.
It's 420, baby. What time is it? 420, baby.
Forever and ever.
All day, every day.
If I ever saw anything like that, I would do something physical. Because I thought what that was doing was a tremendous disservice to the nation.
Yeah.
And by the way, that was a very, very contested issue.
I was
There were
very
people who did
mad.
not agree with getting
It reminds you remember the little dog that would be like, "You don't like me when I'm mad."
Yeah,
Like,
man.
That's what he looks like. He looks like droopy dog. Like,
I love all
okay,
these-
you're gonna be super tough, big guy.
I
You're
love
gonna
all
go
these
throw
like
hands.
shoulda, wouldas.
You're gonna throw hands, big man.
You're fucking 63 years old. Your fucking bones
Throwing
would
hands.
break.
You're throwing hands to the remote control.
Are you
Get the fuck
serious?
outta here.
You wouldn't even throw a plate of ketchup.
I appreciate the concerns. An immediate departure that memo said would have been catastrophic. It's the same thing what President Biden went through. It would have been a debacle.
This is from, we got a super chat. This one is from Grant, and he says, my partner and show patron, Jane Dickweed, translates mise en place as dirty every dish you own all at once. I'll allow it.
Truth.
Keep in mind, the order was for an
Keep in mind, my biceps are 21
would
inches.
have been catastrophic. And yet, President
I'm in
Trump
Congress,
signed the order.
bitch.
These are the highly consequential actions of a president who knows his term will shortly end.
Congress.
At the same time that President Trump was acknowledging privately that he had lost the election,
I'm
was
going
hearing
as
that there
Taylor.
was no evidence of fraud
I want to go
or
as Taylor so that
irregular-
my suit bunches at the shoulders.
I want it to bunch. I want every one of my shirts to be like up
Here's the
here
thing.
and then like
Like
you look like fucking Ram Man.
you
dude.
look like a fucking imbecile. As like a genuinely like as like a little bit of a bigger guy.
Yeah.
Like you've got to have your clothes made. You can't get fucking off. You're in Congress. You can't go off the wreck.
Look,
your shit bunches up. Your shit's
You're
fucking.
not gonna like the
What
way
if-
you look. I guarantee.
No,
it.
I guarantee it. You look
sufficient to change the
insane.
He looks like a cobra whose hood just went up.
Yes. Yes. He looks like an action
remember,
figure. His hair and everything.
A call with
God, all these
I want to beat
all
this
these
guy
people
up.
look. They all look the same.
How much do you want to beat up Alex Cannon, whoever this
what
guy
I was
is?
finding, and if I was
I want to throw
finding
hands with
anything.
him.
Holy shit.
And I remember sharing with him that we weren't finding anything that would be sufficient to change the results in any of the key states.
Also, I
When
look
was that
exactly like Pee Wee Herman. Like literally exactly like
Probably in November.
election! You lost the
Late
election!
November, I think it was before my child was born.
And what was Mr.
Nobody
Meadows'
knows when your
reaction to that
child is born.
information?
That's not a fucking marker of time for anyone but you. Like what?
Right now?
What is that? Oh, it was before my child
Why
was
did you
born.
choose
What?
to play this fucking tape?
What a weird piece of tape.
God.
It was before my child was born. Okay, well, do you remember when that was? Because I fucking don't know.
Can you translate into the non-parents? Like what the fuck?
I'm sorry. Do we all have a calendar based on what time your fucking kid was born? I don't know when your kid was born. I don't care about your kid. Jesus.
And
I know when one of my two kids was born. I think.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Words you used were, so there's no there.
It would be our job to track it down and come up dry because the allegation didn't prove to be true. And we'd have to, relay the news that, that tip that someone told you about those votes or that fraud or,
These
nothing came.
votes.
That would be our
I heard
job
a story once about a thing once.
truth-telling squad, and not a fun job to be. It's an easier job to be telling the president about wild allegations. It's a harder job to be telling him on the back end that that wasn't true.
It shouldn't be a hard job. It should be the easiest job in the world because he should be rational. And the moment you say you lost, you should be like, okay, I lost.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be some kind of you're not trying to get a fucking toddler into a car seat, man.
That's perfect.
You're a fucking, he's an adult. You don't have to, if he lifts his arms up, you just be like, what the fuck are you doing? You're an adult.
Yep.
Stop it.
That's it.
Like, why did he's followed around by this fucking crew of assholes with a bunch of toilet paper begging to wipe his ass all the time.
Yep.
Like, fucking, everybody should have just fired all those idiots, and he should have just been like, I gotta fucking deal with the real world for 15 minutes.
I honestly, and I don't mean this hyperbole, I don't understand why the fuck, and nobody, I don't know, it's impossible for anyone to explain to me, it's November whatever. Cecil, it's November 30th, whatever it is. You know your ass is out of a job in less than 60 days. And now this motherfucker is like lying and cheating and I'd be like, look, I'm already fired.
Yeah, I'm losing my job in 60 days anyway.
I would just leave.
Yeah.
If it was like, burp, 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 I'm going to yell at you. I'm going to be abusive. I'm going to make you lie and do all that. I'd be like, neat story.
Yeah.
I'm not coming in. I'm calling in, quit it.
Or just
I quit.
Is there anybody who walked up to me and be like, you're fucking delusional, man?
Yeah, but Like, just on an individual way, why would I wake up and kiss my wife goodbye and go to work
if I'm getting fired
for this shit
by some jackass anyway?
Right?
Why wouldn't I walk up to him and be like, "You're the fucking worst, and you're terrible"?
That's what I don't understand.
You didn't win because you suck, and you didn't win, you fucking man, baby. Like, what did anybody say that?
I would just leave. Like honestly, like, where's your there's no risk.
Not
you don't even have to
one
have
of them.
principles.
Not one of them.
The thing is, like, you don't have to have principles when there's no risk. Right? You can still be a cowardly piece of human fucking garbage.
Absolutely.
And do all the right things.
Yeah.
Like, they
many of these Republicans did that.
I know, and they
They're
talk about them like they're fucking heroes.
Super cowardly.
And it's like, you don't have to have any fucking balls at all. You know what if I'm
reminds me of?
fired next Thursday and you're like, well, I'm going to stand up to the boss. If Ian, are you hearing me right now, buddy?
Yes,
if I'm going to
yes,
fire
sir.
you next week, would you take any of my shit tomorrow?
Oh, fuck no.
Right.
You know what?
You take my shit for a paycheck.
You know what this reminds me of?
Right.
You know what these people remind me of?
I love you, buddy.
These people remind me when they want to give all these accolades to all these people on, like, talk about these Republicans who stood by their principles and all this stuff.
Get the fuck out of
You know
here.
what it reminds me of?
Yeah.
It reminds me of somebody who they say, like, well, I would, like a guy who's like, I wouldn't rape a girl, and then they want a pat on the back for that.
Right.
Like, and you're just like,
yeah,
man,
okay.
that's what normal people do.
Super standard shit.
I don't understand why you want a pat on the back, but that's what it reminds me of.
Right.
It reminds me of the people who do, like, the bare minimum, and they're just like, and you're like, yeah, that's the fucking bare minimum
it's
to
like-
being a good person.
It's like, I wouldn't do the worst things. You're
I'm
like,
not
neat.
a terrible person. It's like, okay, most people aren't terrible.
Yeah, I wouldn't slap a
You're
baby in the face.
worst.
What?
Yeah.
What?
You fell into not being the absolute worst from being the worst.
But you had so many opportunities that and I really want to express this, that were so cheap to you to do better. And none of these fuckers did.
Yep. Not a single. And when
None
they
of
did,
them.
and when they did,
None
they were
of them.
backed into a corner.
Yeah.
So-
Cassidy Hutchinson, how about this? Fuck you.
Yeah, fuck you.
you to all
Fuck
of
you.
them.
Fuck
Because
you.
there was no risk to you. Your ass was already fired.
And
no risk.
The only reason you're telling this story now is because they came a knocking. Like,
Yes.
you wouldn't be telling this
Yes.
anywhere else if nobody came
I have no
knocking
respect
on your
for
door
this.
and telling you need to fucking talk about this or
right.
your career is over or whatever.
When the stakes were as low as they can be, they still were like, no.
There's like one or two people who like quit on January 6th, and I even think that's way too late.
That's way too late.
Way too late.
That's what I mean. That's November 30th, and somebody's like, you lost the fucking election.
I have more respect for Bill Barr than the people who quit on the 6th.
How weird is that?
Right? I have more respect for that guy because he's like, on the 25th, he's like, fuck you.
Yeah, I know.
I'm going to stay home for Christmas and never come back. That has more integrity than anybody else who's testified.
What fucking world are we living in? We're like, you know who's better? Bill Barr.
Yeah. Well,
than these fuckers?
Jesus Christ.
Fuck each of them. Fuck them all.
Yeah.
Fuck them on basic cable.
Yeah.
Fuck them.
All right, we've got a lot to do. So
I don't know what
we got to
basic
keep
cable
going.
has to
I don't
do
know
with
what that means either, but I love it. It's my new saying.
Generally discussed on that topic was whether the fraud, maladministration, abuse, or irregularities, if aggregated and read most favorably to the campaign, would that be outcome determinative? And I think everyone's assessment in the room, at least amongst the staff, Mark Short, myself, and Greg Jacob, was that it was not sufficient to be outcome determinative.
Look, it's the right of any candidate to litigate genuine election disputes. Nobody argues that. But President Trump's litigation was completely unsuccessful. In our past hearings, we told you that the committee had identified a total of 62 election lawsuits filed by the Trump campaign and its allies between November 4th and January 6th of 2021. Those cases resulted in 61 losses and only a single victory, which did not affect the outcome for any candidate. The claims were not supported by any sufficient evidence of fraud or irregularities. In fact, they were baseless, as judges repeatedly recognized. In none of these 62 cases was President Trump able to establish any viable claims of election fraud sufficient to overturn the results of the election. In those hearings, we shared with you the words used by judges around the country in rejecting the Trump campaign's claims. It's strong language criticizing the lack of evidentiary support for the claims of election fraud in those lawsuits. For example, a federal appeals court in Pennsylvania wrote, quote, Charges require specific allegations and proof. We have neither here.
They don't even have specific
A
allegations.
federal judge in Wisconsin wrote, quote, "The court has allowed the former president the chance to make his case, and he has lost on the merits." Another judge in Michigan called the claims, quote, "nothing but speculation and conjecture that votes for President Trump were either destroyed, discarded, or switched to votes for Vice President Biden." A federal judge in Michigan sanctioned 9 attorneys, including Sidney Powell, for making frivolous allegations in an election fraud case, describing the case as a historic and profound abuse of the judicial process. Recently, a group of distinguished Republican election lawyers, former judges, and elected officials issued a report confirming the findings of the courts. In their report entitled "Lost, Not Stolen," these prominent Republicans analyzed each election challenge and concluded this: Donald Trump and his supporters failed to present evidence of fraud or inaccurate results significant enough to invalidate the results of the 2020 presidential election. On December 11th, Trump's allies lost a lawsuit in the U.S. Supreme Court that he regarded as his last chance at success in the courts. A newly obtained Secret Service message from that day shows how angry President Trump was about the outcome. Quote, "Just FYI,
Super chat here. This is from KK Phil. They say Kinzinger is a real for Republican elected. Yeah, well, if you could get in front of him fucking himself, maybe.
Right? Otis is pissed. Breaking news, Supreme Court denied his lawsuit. He is livid now. Cassidy Hutchison, an aide to Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, was present for that conversation and described it in this way.
This is the day that the Supreme Court had rejected that case. Mr. Meadows and I were in the White House residence at a Christmas reception. And as we were walking back from the Christmas reception that evening, the president was walking out of the Oval Office, so we crossed paths in the Rose Garden colonnade. The president was fired up about the Supreme Court decision. And so I was standing next to Mr. Meadows.
He had a T-shirt gun full of Heinz ketchup.
I stepped back, so I was probably 2-3 feet caddy corner from him, diagonal from him. You know,
Oh, is it caddy or kitty corner for you?
About the decision and how it's wrong.
We're Midwesterners. That's kitty corner.
Calls and just his typical anger.
Are you a caddy corner, Ian?
The president said,
Of course, caddy corner.
Fucking
Caddy corner is where you put the cat.
Are you a soda or a pop?
Wait, soda or pop, Ian?
I don't want people to know we lost, Mark. This is embarrassing.
Right. Soda's
Figure it
soda's
out. We need to
acceptable.
figure it out. I don't want people to know that we lost.
I don't want people to know that we lost.
Where every person,
we didn't
including
lose.
the president, must follow the law and respect the judgment of our courts. President Trump's closest advisors held that view both then and now.
Well, do you believe the president should abide by the rulings of the courts?
Oh, yes, we should all comply with the law at all times to the best of our ability, every one of us.
So once the courts had ruled and the Electoral College had met, the election was over in your view?
Yes, I think I've said previously that when the vice president made the certification and the litigation was complete, it was complete.
When the Electoral College met on the 14th?
Yes, as of December 14th, is that right? I think that's the right date, yes.
I assume
I don't know, it's only your
that
job.
you
Right.
would agree the president is obligated to abide by the rulings of the courts.
Of course.
And I assume you also would.
Everybody is obligated to abide by rules, of course.
And I assume you also would agree the president has a particular obligation to take care that the laws be faithfully executed.
That is one of the president's obligations, correct?
I hate that
Ivanka,
fucking guy.
do you believe the president's obligated to abide by the rulings of the courts?
I do.
Who cares what
By
she
mid-December
thinks?
of 2020, President Trump's senior staff were attempting to persuade him to concede the election outcome.
But if your question is, did I believe he should concede the election at a point in time? Yes, I did.
December 14th,
was the day that the states certified their votes and sent them to Congress. And in my view, that was
Nobody in the world man-spreads like Bill Barr
I didn't
man-spreads.
see.
He really does, doesn't he? He gets this
Look at
crotch.
him.
He looks like he's
I
going to
thought
drop
that-
his dick on the table.
I know.
This would lead inexorably to a new administration.
I told him that my personal viewpoint was that the Electoral College had met.
You're an
which is the
11-year-old.
System that our country is set under to elect a president and vice president. And I believed at that point that the means for him to pursue litigation was probably closed.
And do you recall what his response, if any, was?
He disagreed.
Secretary of Labor Gene Scalia.
What did he
the son
say,
of
though?
late
He
Justice
disagreed, Tom.
Scalia,
Yeah.
visited President Trump in mid-December and explained the situation clearly.
And so I had to put a call into the president. I might have called on the 13th. We spoke, I believe, on the 14th,
God, this guy and his dad, throw him into the sun.
Oh, my God, I
in
know.
which
Throw him into the sun metaphorically, though. Like metaphorically.
Metaphorically. Because physically it's impossible.
Because physically we just can't do it.
We don't know
yet.
how that
We don't have the
technology.
technology. But
But
if
if
we
we
did
invented
have
it-
the technology, then you should hyperloop him into the sun.
First helionauts.
Yeah.
conveyed to him that I thought that it was time for him to acknowledge that President Biden had prevailed in the election.
Okay. If Scalia is a goblin, that guy's a hobgoblin.
100%.
Right? Right? I'm not wrong,
100%.
right? Yeah.
You're not at all wrong.
But I communicated to the president
He's
that
the lesser of the goblins.
when that legal process is exhausted and when the electors have voted, that's the point at which that outcome needs to be expected. I told him that I did believe, yes, that once those legal processes were run, if fraud had not been established that had affected the outcome of the election, that unfortunately I believed that what had to be done was conceded.
Okay, imagine you had the Howdy Doody doll, right? And instead of that guy at the end of RoboCop who gets hit into the thing, Howdy Doody falls into the
into the
pit
vat of schmutz.
toxic goo, and then comes out and is like, "Help me!" That's him.
Yes,
that's this guy.
Yes, somebody should hit him with a
Not
chair
only
and watch
did
him
the courts
explode.
reject President Trump's
Metaphorically,
fraud and other
metaphorically
allegations,
explode
his Department of Justice appointees, including Bill Barr,
with his body.
Jeffrey Rosen, and Richard Donahue did as well.
I just want Kissinger to invite him to the gun show.
Right?
That's what I want.
No wonder he's a Republican. He's pro guns.
President Trump.
I'd like to
knew
introduce
the
you to the
truth.
first and second.
Heard what all his experts and senior staff were telling him. He knew he had lost the election, but he made the deliberate choice to ignore the courts, to ignore the Justice Department, to ignore his campaign leadership, to ignore senior advisors, and to pursue a completely unlawful effort to overturn the election. His intent was plain: ignore the rule of law and stay in power. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Virginia, Ms. Luria.
Who?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mid-December was a turning point. President Trump made a decision, a choice, to ignore the courts and his advisors and to push forward to overturn the election. His efforts to overturn the
I
election
love the digital
were not
artifact on her
random
right
or
shoulder that makes it look like somebody took a
Rather,
bite
they
out
were
of her.
part of a coordinated, multi-part plan to ensure
See it?
that he
I think
stayed
it's.
in
I think
power.
it's the way her jacket
Donald Trump
fits.
was the driver.
Everybody there has a weird fitting shoulder jacket.
For real.
She's inviting people to the gun show too.
behind each part of this plan. He was personally and directly involved. Of course, a key element of the plan was continuing to convince tens of millions of Americans that he did not, in fact, lose. Again, he did this even though his own campaign advisors and his Justice Department officials told him his claims of fraud were wrong. In this video, you'll see that even when top law enforcement officials told the president his election fraud claims were false, he still repeated the claims in the days and weeks that followed, sometimes Even the very next
specifically
day.
raised the Dominion voting machines, which I found
Jump the
to be
gun.
among the most disturbing allegations. Disturbing in the sense that I saw absolutely zero basis for the allegations. I told them that it was crazy stuff, and they were wasting their time on that, and it was doing a grave disservice to the country.
And then
We
I
have a
ate a
company
fly that was flying
That's
by
very
me.
suspect. Its name is Dominion. With the turn of a dial or the change of a chip, you can press a button for Trump and the vote goes to Biden. What kind of a system is this?
We definitely
Sue
talked about
him
Antrim County
into
again.
fucking
That was sort of
to
done at that
the
point,
dust.
that the hand recount had been done and all of that. But we cited back to
Also,
that
you would have to
say,
change a
this is an
chip.
example of what people
Just-
are
I
telling
just
you
makes me
and what's
so-
being filed in some of
He
these
doesn't even know
court
what he's talking
filings
about. He doesn't.
that are just not supported by the evidence. And this is the problem. The problem is people keep telling you these things and they turn out not to be true.
In addition, there is the highly troubling matter of Dominion voting systems. In one Michigan county alone, 6,000 votes were switched from Trump to Biden, and the same systems are used in the majority of states in our country.
Sue
I went into this
Sue him into the
and
dirt.
would,
Sue him forever.
tell them how crazy some of these allegations were and how ridiculous some of them were. And I'm talking about some of them like, more absentee votes were cast in Pennsylvania than there were absentee ballots requests. Stuff like that. It was just easy to blow up. There was never an indication of
truth,
interest in what the actual facts were.
No, think about that. No indication
more
of interest in the
votes.
truth.
Right.
That's just what a damning sentence
Yeah.
that actually is, even by accident from that motherfucker.
Then there were voters. Think of that. You had more votes than you had voters.
That's
That's
a
an
lie.
easy one to
You're
figure.
a fucking liar.
And it's by the thousands.
You're a fucking
Then he
liar.
raised the big vote dump, as he called it, in
Because he's a
Detroit.
big dump.
And that he
He
said
knows a
people
good
saw
dump.
boxes coming into the counting station at all hours of the morning. And I said, Mr. President, there are 630 precincts in Detroit, and unlike elsewhere in the
Mr. President, you're a giant child, so I have to explain every single thing to you, and then you will stomp your foot and say, that's not how
That's
it works.
not what I want.
Yeah.
I want a different answer.
That's fucking, it's so...
His whole life.
It's so exhausting to think about his existence and how everybody has to fucking walk up and pamper his fucking big, ugly, fucking giant face.
His whole life, if he yelled enough, he got a different
so
answer.
pathetic. It's so pathetic.
state. They centralized the counting process, so they're not counted in each precinct. They're moved to counting stations, and so the normal process would involve boxes coming in at all different hours.
This is Michigan. At 6:31 in the morning,
Where's the Sharpie?
a vote dump of 149,772 votes came in unexpectedly.
With regard
No.
to Georgia, we
No.
looked at the tape, we interviewed the witnesses. There is no suitcase. The president kept fixating on this suitcase that supposedly had fraudulent ballots and that the suitcase was rolled out from under the table. And I said, no, sir, there is no suitcase. You can watch that video over and over. There is no suitcase. There is a wheeled bin where they carry the ballots, and that's just how they move ballots around.
why do you have to
the facility.
explain
There's
this shit?
nothing
Right, like
suspicious
things
about
are
that at all.
heavy and numerous.
Also, you just because you don't know how it works doesn't mean it was a fraud.
I know.
Like, just because your tiny little brain can't fucking envision it.
My lack of imagination means the answer I want.
Election officials pull boxes, Democrats, and suitcases of ballots out from under a table. You all saw it on television. Totally fraudulent.
This happened over and over again.
Cranked him up.
And our committee's
What
report
a piece of
will
shit.
document
Such
it.
a trash human.
Purposeful lies.
Dude, he's gonna
made
run in 24.
public, directly at
I kinda
odds
hope he
with
does.
what Donald Trump knew.
I think he's
from
unelectable.
I hope
unassailable
all those
sources,
people fucking
the
implode.
Justice Department's own investigations,
Do you want him to run?
and his own campaign.
I don't know.
Donald
I'm a little
Trump
afraid of it
maliciously
still.
repeated
Yeah.
this
He's a
nonsense
motivator, you know?
to a wide audience over and over again. His intent was to deceive. President Trump's plan also involved trying to coerce government officials to change the election outcome in the states he lost. He personally reached out to numerous state officials and and pressured them to take unlawful steps to alter the election results in those states. These actions, taken directly by the president himself, made it clear what his intentions were.
There is some really harsh lighting going on in here.
Yeah, there is.
Right? I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not
you're
wrong.
not wrong at all.
And I'm not trying to be a dick, but it looks like the right
Everybody's
side of her face
Yeah.
is like 15 years old.
I noticed it on Kinzinger,
and it's,
too.
It's because of the
Yeah.
lighting. The
Uh-huh.
lighting is super harsh in here.
Just on
today.
one side.
Yeah, it's like one side.
overhead and at
it's
an
like-
angle.
It's like overhead at an angle, and they're doing shadow side to camera, so it's all fucking
It's rough,
dramatic.
man.
It's really rough.
It's rough.
To prevent the orderly transfer of power. We all recall, for example, President Trump's tape-recorded call with Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. At the time this call occurred, President Trump had already been told repeatedly by the U.S. Justice Department, by his campaign, and by his advisors that his allegations of fraud in Georgia were false.
So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780
Oh my God.
votes, which is one more than we have.
Animaniacs.
Because we want to say, look, we need only 11,000 votes. We have far more than that as
They
it
pushed me down
stands
and
now.
missed me.
We'll
No,
have
no.
more and more. So what are we going to do here, folks? I only need 11,000 votes. Fellas, I need 11,000 votes. Give me a break.
I just want to find 11,780 votes. That's an extraordinary demand by the president, especially since he already knew from the Justice Department there was no genuine basis for this request. No one could think it would be legal for the Secretary of State to simply find the votes the president needed in order to win. Secretary Raffensperger told the president the truth, that he lost the election in Georgia. But President Trump did not accept that answer. Instead, he suggested that Secretary Raffensperger himself might be prosecuted.
That's a criminal offense. And you can't let that happen. That's a big risk to you and to Ryan, your lawyer. That's a big risk.
We know that President Trump's White House advisors reacted negatively. Immediately after the call, Cassidy Hutchinson had a conversation with Chief of Staff Mark Meadows.
I remember looking at Mark and I said, Mark, you can't possibly think we're going to pull this off. Like, that call was crazy. And he looked at me and just started shaking his head and he was like, no, Cass, he knows it's over. He knows he lost, but we're going to keep trying. There's some good options out there still. We're going to keep trying.
This call and other related activity is now the focus of an ongoing criminal investigation in Fulton County, Georgia. And Georgia is not the only state where President Trump tried to pressure state officials to change the results. He also attempted to pressure state officials in Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Michigan to change the results in those states as well. While President Trump was pressuring state officials, he was also trying to use the Department of Justice to change the election result. His top officials told him that there was no evidence to support his claims of fraud, but he didn't care. As he told them, just say the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman.
Jesus. It's just
When these
that's just so
officials would
incredible.
not do what he
I know
said,
we've seen that before,
President
but
Trump
it's so
embarked
incredible.
on
So
an effort
disgusting.
to install Jeff Clark as acting attorney general, solely because he would do what others in the department would not do. We know that Trump was doing so for a specific purpose, so Clark could corruptly employ the Justice Department's authority to help persuade the states to flip electoral votes. For example, when Richard Donahue and Jeff Rosen, both appointed by President Trump, learned of Mr. Clark's proposal, here's why they said they forcefully rejected it.
And I recall toward the end saying, what you're proposing is nothing less than the United States Justice Department meddling in the outcome of a presidential election.
And he's like,
but
no,
more
duh.
importantly, this was not based on fact. This was actually contrary to the facts as developed by department investigations over the last several weeks and months. So I responded to that, and for the department to insert itself into the political process this way, I think would have had grave consequences for the country. It may very well have spiraled us into a constitutional crisis.
We know from our investigation that President Trump offered Jeff Clark the position of acting attorney general, and that Jeff Clark had decided to accept it. The only reason this ultimately did not happen is that the White House counsel and a number of Justice Department officials confronted the president in the Oval Office and threatened mass resignation.
Why would that
And
matter?
then
Maybe the optics would
and I
be so
said
bad?
Something to the effect of you're going to have a huge personnel blowout within hours.
It's going to be balloons and everything, like little pointy hats. It's going to be a blowout.
And that's not going to be in any.
Not one of his diapers blows out.
The president
Gonna be
ultimately
shit all up his
relented
back.
only because the entire leadership of the Department of Justice, as well as his White House counsel, threatened to resign. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Florida.
They all should have fucking
Mrs.
resigned
Murphy,
anyway.
for an opening statement.
They should have realized they were working for a monster.
This is the last one.
Efforts to unlawfully overturn
This is the last one,
results
'cause
of the
they're all
2020
talking.
election were not limited to the big lie and pressuring state officials and the Department of Justice officials. Another key part of the president's effort was a scheme to assemble fake electors to cast false electoral votes in the states that President Trump lost.
I like her rhinestone
This
shirt.
was something done not only with the president's knowledge,
Is it sequins?
but also
I don't know.
with
It's
his direct
bedazzlingly awesome, though.
participation. Ronna McDaniel, chair of the Republican National Committee, testified before this committee that President Trump and his attorney, Dr. John Eastman, called her and asked her to arrange for the fake electors to meet and rehearse the process of casting their fake votes.
When I received the call, again, I don't remember the exact date. It was from the White House switchboard, and it was President Trump who had contacted me.
And did President Trump have anyone else on the line with him?
He introduced me to a gentleman named John Eastman. So I vaguely remember him mentioning that he was a professor, and then essentially he turned the call over to Mr. Eastman, who then proceeded to talk about the importance of the RNC helping the campaign gather these contingent electors in case any of the legal challenges that were ongoing changed the result of any of the states.
These fake electors were ultimately part of the president's plan to replace genuine Biden electors with Trump electors on January 6th.
That's why we need to get rid of the whole
As part of this
elector
plan,
system.
The false electoral
Right,
slates were
right.
sent
It's
to the
nonsense.
National
You don't need
Archives and to the
electors.
Capitol.
What did most
The
people
fake
want? We
electors
just
plan was
fucking
also
count the
tied to
votes.
another
Right.
plan, the coercive pressure campaign to make Vice President Mike Pence reject or refuse to count certain Biden electoral votes so that President Donald Trump would, quote, win re-election instead. Here is what Vice President Pence has said about this scheme.
President Trump said I had the right to overturn the election. But President Trump is wrong. I had no right to overturn the election. The presidency belongs to the American people and the American people alone. And frankly, there is no idea more un-American than the notion that any one person could choose the American president.
Make no mistake, President Trump knew that what he was demanding Vice President Pence.
I am still a little upset that they got his lawyers and not him to sit in front of them.
I know.
Like, fuck you.
I know,
Fuck
man.
you, that's why.
Dude, I know.
Fuck you, that's why.
They didn't get Mark Meadows. They didn't get Pence. They didn't get Trump. Like, they got like all these like adjacent people.
Well, Meadows is going to go to jail.
Yeah.
Like Meadows is going to jail.
100%.
Like Meadows is going to go to jail when this is all over. Meadows is going. Meadows has been since the beginning the sacrificial lamb to throw to the. He has been since the beginning.
Yeah.
But you know, I really just wish that some of these big guys that you know aren't going to fucking see any time, especially Pence, who clearly fucking fought against it.
I know.
While he was in there, like, you should make him sit there and tell everybody Tell everybody you did it, because everybody else is saying you did it. You tell everybody.
And there's
you
the
did
whole story about like him down in the parking garage and everything.
There's fucking photos of him fucking hiding by a fucking dumpster.
I know.
Get in a sit there and tell me
Where's
your
his
fucking
narrative?
story. Yeah, where's your fucking story? Fucking coward.
Justice do was illegal.
He should be asking
Why
to tell
didn't
that
you
story.
resign that
yes.
day?
The thing is, like, yes, right. And also, he should be begging to tell that story. If you give a shit about a democracy, you should be begging to tell that story.
Absolutely.
Hiding from the story hides from the truth of democracy.
Fuck him.
He was informed of this repeatedly, and specifically on January 4th. Even his lawyer, John Eastman, admitted in front of President Trump that this plan would break the law by violating the Electoral Count Act.
Did John Eastman ever admit, as far as you know, in front of the president, that his proposal would violate the Electoral Count Act?
That dude should lean back some more.
I believe he did on the floor.
He should put his feet, his
And Dr.
ass
Eastman
in the
confirmed
seat
this
behind him,
in
and his
writing.
feet
Right?
over the
Recall
chair in
this
front of him.
email
Holy shit.
written on
Oh, I'm
January
gonna
6th, in which
testify.
Vice President Pence's counsel asked Dr. Eastman, did you advise the president that in your professional judgment, the vice president does not have power to decide things unilaterally? Dr. Eastman replied, he's been so advised. Of course, President Trump's own White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, also recognized that this plan was unlawful. Here is Mr. Cipollone's testimony.
My view is that the vice president didn't have the legal authority to do anything except what he did.
There is no doubt that President
You know
Trump's
who I
pressure
miss?
campaign
Hamster
on Vice
Man.
President Pence
I miss
was
Justice Bat.
significant.
Yeah.
On the morning of January
I know.
6th, President Trump called the vice president from the Oval Office and demanded that he overturn the results of the election. Numerous witnesses told the Select Committee about the invective that President Trump leveled at his own vice president.
Something to the effect, the wording's wrong. I made the wrong decision 4 or 5 years ago.
And the word that she relayed to that the president called the vice president, I apologize for being impolite, but do you remember what she said her father called him?
The P word.
What's that
But
word?
Vice President Pence didn't
Punk.
waver even when his own life was endangered by President Trump and the rioters at the Capitol on January 6th, as you'll see in more detail later. A federal judge concluded, based on this and other evidence, that President Trump's pressure campaign against the vice president likely violated multiple criminal statutes. In the end, all these people, Department of Justice officials, state elections officials, his own vice president, stood strong in the face of President Trump's immense pressure. But as we now know, President Trump had already summoned tens of thousands of his supporters to Washington on January 6th to take back their country. On December 19th, President Trump first told his supporters to come to Washington. In this and numerous other tweets, he fraudulently and repeatedly promoted January 6th as the day Americans could come and change the election outcome. For weeks, President Trump worked with others to plan the rally, intending all along that he would send an assembled crowd of angry supporters to the Capitol after his speech on the ellipse on January 6th.
He looks like he just wandered off the set of Amadeus. And he got into like modern clothes.
And he's like, what? How did I?
Or you remember, what was it, Bram Stoker's Dracula?
Yes.
Doesn't he look like
He does.
He looks like Gary Oldman from Bram
He
Stoker's
does.
Dracula. Yeah.
He does.
We obtained a text message that one rally organizer sent on January 4th. In part, it reads that, quote, POTUS is going to have us march there / the Capitol, and POTUS is going to just call for it unexpectedly. Again, each of these examples, the big lie, the pressure campaigns against state officials, the pressure campaign against the Department of Justice and his vice president, the fake electors, summoning the mob, all of this demonstrates President Trump's personal and substantial role in the plot to overturn the election. He was intimately involved. He was the central player. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In our past hearings, you have seen direct evidence that President Trump sent a crowd of his supporters to the Capitol on January 6th, knowing they were armed and angry. This was the last, most desperate and dangerous prong of his plan to disrupt the joint session and prevent the orderly transition of power. On the morning of the 6th, the Secret Service was at the Ellipse, screening the members of the crowd as they entered the rally site. And they noticed something significant about the crowd. Tens of thousands of people were outside the rally site, but did not want to go through the magnetometers, the metal detectors that were used to screen for dangerous weapons. Since our last hearings, the Select Committee has received greater cooperation from the Secret Service. Nevertheless, Secret Service text messages from this period were erased in the days and months following the attack on the Capitol, even though documents and materials related to January 6th had already been requested by the Department of Justice and Congress. But we were able to obtain nearly 1 million emails, recordings, and other electronic records from the Secret Service. Over the month of August, the Select Committee began its review of hundreds of thousands of pages and multiple hours of that material, providing substantial new evidence about what happened on January 6th and the days leading up to it.
Here we go. Here's
that
the good
review
stuff.
Continues. What you're about to hear is just a sample of the new and relevant evidence that we have received. Mounting evidence before January 6th predicted violence, and not just violence generally, but violence directed at the Capitol. Intelligence about this risk was directly available to the U.S. Secret Service and others in the White House in advance of the Ellipse speech, in advance of the march to the Capitol. The committee has shown evidence that President Trump was aware of the risk of violence. The FBI, U.S. Capitol Police, Metropolitan Police, and other agencies all gathered and disseminated intelligence suggesting the possibility of violence at the Capitol prior to the riot. We're now going to show you just a sample of the evidence we have received. Days before January 6th, the President's senior advisors at the Department of Justice and FBI, for example, received an intelligence summary that included material indicating that certain people traveling to Washington were making plans to attack the Capitol. This summary noted online calls to occupy federal buildings, rhetoric about invading the Capitol building, and plans to arm themselves and to engage in political violence at the event. Other agencies were also hearing predictions suggesting possible violence at the Capitol. On a call with President Trump's White House National Security Staff in early January 2021, Deputy Secretary of Defense David Norquist had warned about the potential that the Capitol would be the target of the attack. Here's General Mark Milley, who was also present for this call, describing Deputy Secretary Norquist's warning.
So during these calls, I only remember it in hindsight because he was almost like clairvoyant. Norquist says during one of these calls, the greatest threat is a direct assault on the Capitol. I'll never forget it.
This email, for example, was an alert that the Secret Service received on December 24th with the heading, "Armed and Ready, Mr. President." According to the intelligence, multiple users online were targeting members of Congress, instructing others to march into the chambers on January 6th and make sure they know who to fear. In this report, received on December 26th, a Secret Service field office relayed a tip that had been received by the FBI. According to the source of the tip, the Proud Boys plan to march armed into D.C. They think that they will have a large enough group to march into D.C. armed, the source reported, and will outnumber the police so they can't be stopped. The source went on to say, their plan is to literally kill people. Please take this tip seriously and investigate further. The source also made clear that the Proud Boys had detailed their plans on multiple websites.
What a tip!
Like the Donald.win.
Normally, I'm not a fan of just the tip.
Let's pause here. The Secret Service had
that's enough
advance
for me.
information.
That's all I
more
got
than
to
10
offer
days
anyway.
beforehand regarding the Proud Boys planning for January 6th. We know now, of course, that the Proud Boys and others did lead the assault on our Capitol building. On December 31st, agents circulated intelligence reports that President Trump supporters have proposed a movement to occupy Capitol Hill. In particular, they flagged spikes in violent hashtags like "We Are the Storm," 1776 Rebel, and Occupy Capitals. On January 5th, a Secret Service open source unit flagged a social media account on the Donald.win that threatened to bring a sniper rifle to a rally on January 6th. The user also posted a picture of a handgun and rifle with the caption, "Sunday Gun Day," providing Overwatch January 6th will be wild. Later, on the evening of January 5th, the Secret Service learned during an FBI briefing that right-wing groups were establishing armed QRFs, or Quick Reaction Forces, readying to deploy for January 6th. Groups like the Oath Keepers were standing by at the ready should POTUS request assistance. By invoking the Insurrection Act, agents were informed. As we all know now, the Oath Keepers did play a specific role on January 6th and had stashed weapons in Virginia for further violence that evening. Also on that day, the Secret Service was readying its security precautions for the president's speech at the Ellipse the next day. A Secret Service deputy chief instructed agents to add certain objects to the list of items that would be prohibited at the rally site, including ballistic vests, tactical vests, armored or not, and ballistic helmets. By the morning of January 6th, it was clear that the Secret Service anticipated violence. It felt like the calm before the storm, one agent predicted in a Protective Intelligence Division chat group. Another remarked how agents were watching the crazies on live stream. By 9:09 that morning, the Secret Service could also see that many rally-goers were assembled outside the security perimeter. One agent emailed, possibly because they have stuff that couldn't come through, would probably be an issue with this crowd. Just a thought. By 9:30 that morning, agents reported more than 25,000 people outside the rally site. An hour later, the Secret Service reported that the crowd was on the mall watching, but not in line. The head of the President's Secret Service Protective Detail, Robert Engel, was specifically aware of the large crowds outside the magnetometers. He passed that information along to Tony Ornato, who worked for Mark Meadows in the Chief of Staff's office. The documents we obtained from the Secret Service make clear that the crowd outside the magnetometers was armed and the agents knew it. Take a look at what they were seeing and hearing on the ground. One report from the rally site at 7:58 a.m. said, some members of the crowd are wearing ballistic helmets, body armor, carrying radio equipment, and military-grade backpacks. Another, from 9:30 a.m., said that there were possibly OC spray, meaning pepper spray, and or plastic riot shields. At 11:23 a.m., agents also reported possible armed individuals, one with a Glock, one with a rifle. Over the next hour, agents reported possible man with a gun reported, confirmed pistol on hip located in a tree.
In a tree!
And one detained
a
at
fucking
14th and
lunatic
I
with a
Street
gun in a
Northwest.
tree.
Individual had an assault rifle on his person.
Yeah, dude. You're not
Minutes
there to
before
fucking
President
protest.
Trump
No.
began
Shoot
his
somebody.
speech, members of the Federal Protective Service, an agency tasked with protecting federal buildings, were alerted about an arrest of a protester with a gun on his waistband. And during the speech, the weapons-related arrests continued. At 12:13 p.m., United States Park Police arrested a man with a rifle in front of the World War II memorial. These agents remarked on the number of weapons that had been seized that day, speculating that the situation could get worse. With so many weapons found so far, you wonder how many are unknown, one agent wrote at 12:36 p.m., could be sporty after dark. At 12:47 p.m., another agent responded, no doubt. The people at the Ellipse said they are moving to the Capitol after the POTUS speech. As the documents we received make clear, the Secret Service was aware of weapons possessed by those gathered at rallies in D.C. as early as the evening before. Take this document, for instance, which details multiple arrests in the crowds demonstrating on January 5th. Those arrests were for weapons offenses, handguns, high-capacity feeding devices, ammunition. What the Secret Service saw on the 6th was entirely consistent with the violent rhetoric circulating in the days before the joint session on pro-Trump websites, at times amplified by the president's own advisors. On one of these sites, as you've heard, one of those was called the Donald.win. The Select Committee has obtained a text message that Jason Miller, a senior communications advisor, sent to Mark Meadows less than a week before January 6th. "I got the base fired up," he wrote in all caps. He sent a link to this page on the Donald.win. The linked web page had comments about the joint session of Congress on January 6th. Take a look at some of those comments. "Gallows don't require electricity."
That's true, though.
If the filthy commie maggots try to push their fraud through, there will be hell to pay. Our lawmakers in Congress can leave one of two ways. One, in a body bag. Two, after
Legitimate political
rightfully
discourse.
certifying Trump the winner.
This is how democracy works.
Mr. Miller
This
claimed
is
that he had no
democracy.
idea
democracy,
about the
folks.
hundreds of comments like these in the link that he sent to Mark Meadows.
If I had seen something like that, I
Yeah, but
probably
that was
would've
Antifa who
looked
posted
into someone at the White, or if I had seen some of that nature, I would have said we got to flag this for Secret Service or something.
They
of that
shrunk this
nature.
down to a thumbnail and then re-enlarged it.
But the Trump
What is that
administration was
video?
aware of this type of violent rhetoric prior to January 6th. In fact, as we have seen, the Secret Service and other agencies knew of the prospect of violence well in advance of the president's speech at the Ellipse. Despite this, certain White House and Secret Service witnesses previously testified that they had received no intelligence about violence that could have potentially threatened any of the protectees on January
They
6th,
lied.
including
That's
the
called
vice
lying.
president.
That's called perjury.
Evidence
That is
strongly
the lying,
suggests
yes.
that this testimony is not credible, and the committee is reviewing additional material from the Secret Service and other sources. The Secret Service was monitoring this kind of online activity and was sharing and receiving the results of that effort.
How do you deny this? You look
They work
either
closely with
incompetent. You
other
look
agencies,
incompetent.
You look
sharing
incompetent, or
intelligence
you-
about
or
the
you
joint
look like
session
you're
of
colluding.
Congress
Right.
derived from social media and other sources. The same day Jason Miller sent his text message, agents received reports about a spike in activity on another platform called Parler. This was
Parler?
December 30th. In this email,
This was before Truth
an agent
Social,
received a
so-
report
Yeah, right.
noting a lot of violent rhetoric on Parler directed at government people and entities, including Secret Service protectees. One of these protectees was Vice President Pence, perhaps the primary target of President Trump's pressure campaign in the days leading up to January 6th.
Yeah, 100%.
The day before the joint session, on January 5th, Secret Service was aware of increased chatter focused on Vice President Pence, in particular, whether he would do what President Trump wanted him to do, reverse the results of the election in the joint session the next day,
I want to
January
reverse
6th.
results.
On the morning of the 6th,
I hope he does the right
agents
thing,
received
the right
alerts of
thing,
online
very
threats
good.
that Vice President Pence would be, quote, a dead man walking
Jesus
if he
Christ.
doesn't do the right thing. Another agent reported, quote, I saw several other alerts saying they will storm the Capitol if he doesn't do the right thing. The anger reflected in these postings was obvious. The man at the center of the storm on January 6th, President Trump. On the evening of January 5th, President Trump gathered a few of his communications staffers in the Oval Office. The door was open, allowing the president and others assembled there to hear the sounds of the crowd gathered at Freedom Plaza just a few blocks from the White House. President Trump could tell that his supporters were riled up. Here again is Judd Deere, a deputy White House press secretary, describing the president's reaction.
he fairly quickly moved to how fired up the crowd is or was going to be.
What did he say about it?
Just that they were fired up, they were angry, they feel like the election's been stolen, that the election was rigged, that we went on and on about that for a little bit.
Yes, the president knew the crowd was angry because he had stoked that anger.
Of course.
He knew that they believed that the election
He knew they were angry
had
because
been
he
rigged and
intentionally
stolen
got them
because
angry.
He had told them falsely.
No, those
that it had
bees
been
are
rigged
mad because
and
I kept
stolen.
shitting them with a
And
slingshot,
by the time
smacking
he
them.
incited that angry mob to march on the Capitol, he knew they were armed and dangerous. All the better to stop the peaceful transfer of power.
Yep.
In the morning of January 6th, President Trump knew that the crowd was angry. He knew that they were armed and dangerous, and he knew that they were going to the Capitol.
Did they?
It's important to understand the lengths
I cut the
president
procedural.
was
They
willing to go
recognized this guy.
to physically be at the Capitol because it was part of his strategy to disrupt Congress and to stay in power. As the time for the Ellipse rally approached, an email was circulated among intelligence officials, including Secret Service intelligence official, attaching communications among rallygoers that specifically contemplated violence. Trump has given us marching orders. One post on the Donald.win wrote, basically, if you're east of the Mississippi, you can and should be there. Advance on the Capitol. Keep your guns hidden. Don't fuck around.
Yeah.
Full kits.
Drop that out.
180 rounds minimum for main rifle, another 50 for sidearm per person. What is clear from this record is that the White House had more than enough warning to warrant stopping any plan for an Ellipse rally and certainly for stopping any march to the Capitol. And as evidence from our prior hearings has suggested, the president was aware of this information. But despite awareness of the potential for violence and weapons among the crowd, the Ellipse event nevertheless went forward. And Donald Trump instructed
It's honestly
the
amazing
angry
that more
crowd,
shots weren't fired.
some of whom were armed, to march to the Capitol.
You're right.
As my colleague Mr. Schiff just described, the Secret Service reported that thousands in the crowd near the Washington Monument would not enter the rally area because magnetometers used in screening attendees would detect any prohibited items they carried. Mr. Trump knew this. His Secret Service had told him about it that morning. Even in spite of these warnings, Cassidy Hutchinson overheard the president say this shortly before he took stage.
He wanted it full, and he was angry that we weren't letting people through the mags with weapons, what the Secret Service deemed as weapons and our weapons. I was in the vicinity of a conversation where I overheard the president say something to the effect of, I don't effing care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me. Take the effing mags away. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here. Let the people in. Take the effing mags away.
Sounds exactly like how he talks. Sounds exactly like
no part of that is like, what?
Asked law enforcement
How out
to
of
let his
character?
supporters in the rally site.
And I'd love to have, if those tens of thousands of people would be allowed, the military, the Secret Service, and we want to thank you, and the police, law enforcement, great, you're doing a great job.
We'll beat the shit out of you later, but
They could be allowed to come up here with us. Is that possible? Can you just let them come up, please?
President Trump then told his supporters to march to the Capitol. Let's pause at this point to consider President Trump's state of mind, his motivation at this moment.
I love
By
this.
that point, it was known to Secret Service that members of the crowd were armed. President Trump had been told, and there was no doubt that President Trump knew what he was going to do, sending an angry mob, a number of whom were clad in tactical gear and military garb, armed with various weapons, to the Capitol. There's no scenario where that action is benign, and there's no scenario where an American president should have engaged in that conduct. It did not matter whether President Trump believed the election had been stolen or not. This could not be justified on any basis, for any reason. You may also recall testimony from our summer hearings regarding Mr. Trump's efforts to lead the mob to the Capitol himself in his angry altercation in the presidential SUV when the Secret Service told him it was far too dangerous for him to go. As we detailed in testimony from the Metropolitan Police and White House personnel during our July 21st hearing, information about the altercation was widely known. So widely known that one former White House employee with national security responsibilities explained that this information was in fact water cooler talk in the White House complex. As that professional told us, they remember hearing in the days after January 6th how angry the president was when he was in a limo that afternoon. That professional also testified that they were specifically informed of the president's irate behavior in the SUV by Mr. Ornato in Mr. Ornato's office. It was Mr. Engel with Mr. Ornato in that office. They'd expressed to me that the president was irate, on the drive up. Mr. Engel did not deny the fact that the president was irate. That, of course, corresponds closely with the testimony you saw this summer from Cassidy Hutchinson, a Metropolitan Police officer who was in the motorcade, and from multiple sources. Additionally, after concluding its review of the voluminous additional Secret Service communications from January 5th and January 6th, the committee will be recalling witnesses and conducting further investigative depositions based on that material. Following that activity, we will provide even greater detail in our final report. And I will also note this. The committee is reviewing testimony regarding potential obstruction on this issue, including testimony about advice given not to tell the committee about this specific topic. We will address this matter in our report.
Boom.
We also want to remind you now of how security professionals working in the White House complex and who reported to national security officials responded when they learned that Mr. Trump intended to lead the mob to the Capitol.
To be completely honest, we were all in a state of shock.
Because what? You fuck me, I'd fuck you. I know, right?
One, I think the actual physical feasibility of doing it, and then also we all knew what that implicated and what that meant. That this was no longer a rally, that this was going to move to something else if he physically walked to the Capitol. I don't know if you want to use the word insurrection, coup, whatever. We all knew that this would move from a normal, democratic, public event into something else. Why were we alarmed?
Right.
The president wanted to lead tens of thousands of people to the Capitol. I think that was enough grounds for us to be alarmed.
President Trump was still
you're not an
considering
asshole.
traveling to the Capitol even after returning to the White House. He knew well before 2 p.m. that a violent riot was underway at the Capitol. He was aware of the ongoing lawlessness, but his motorcade was held on West Executive Avenue outside the White House because he still wanted to join the crowd. Here's Kayleigh McEnany, the White House press secretary, describing an exchange she had with the president as soon as he arrived back at the White House.
So to the best of my recollection, I recall him being saying that he wanted to physically walk and be a part of the march.
Remember the
and then
Muppets
saying
band?
That, he would
What's
ride
that?
the beast,
Remember the Muppets band?
If he needed to.
Yeah.
ride in the
Oh, yeah.
presidential-
Tall blonde.
Yeah, 100%.
From the Secret Service, the Select Committee has also obtained important
call
new
them the
evidence
Slut
on this
Committee?
issue.
What?
It shows how frantic this hour must have been.
I didn't know they had a
for the
committee.
Secret Service, scrambling to get the President of the United States
No shame in the
to
game.
back down.
That's way more
from a
organized than I just had
dangerous
thought.
and
How do
reckless
you like that beer?
decision
That's good.
that put people in harm's way. Take a look at the Secret Service email from 1:19 p.m. on January 6th, the minute that President Trump got out of the presidential vehicle back at the White House. As soon as the president left his motorcade, leadership from the Secret Service contacted Bobby Engel, the lead agent for the presidential detail, and warned him that they were, quote, concerned about an OTR, an off-the-record movement, to the Capitol. The people sworn to protect the safety of the President of the United States and who routinely put themselves in harm's way were convinced that this was a bad idea. Secret Service documents also reveal how agents were poised to take President Trump to the Capitol later that afternoon. Agents were instructed to don their protective gear and prepare for a movement. A few minutes later, they were told the president would leave for the Capitol in 2 hours. It wasn't until 1:55 p.m. that the president's lead Secret Service agent told them to stand down. We are not doing an OTR to the Capitol. By then, rioters had breached the Capitol and were violently attacking the efforts of the brave men and women in law enforcement trying to resist the mob. President Trump may not have gone to the Capitol on January 6th, but what he did from the White House cannot be justified. While congressional leaders, both Democrats and Republicans, worked with Vice President Pence to try and address the violence, President Trump refused urgent pleas for help from nearly everyone around him. And what he did do only made the situation worse. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Raskin, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The president was still exhorting his supporters at the Ellipse to go fight like hell at 12:50, around the time that the first wave of rioters first breached barricades defending the Capitol. Secret Service documents we recently received give a timeline of precisely what the White House knew and when. At 1:19, the President's Emergency Operations Center sent an email to Secret Service, national security, and military advisors to the President and Vice President, informing them that, quote, hundreds of Trump supporters stormed through metal barricades at the back of the Capitol building about 1 p.m. Wednesday, running past security guards and breaking fences. When the president returned to the White House around 1:20, he entered the Oval Office and was told right then about the onset of violence at the Capitol. From that point until approximately 4 p.m., over the next 2 hours and 40 minutes,
all I can look at is his bad haircut. Look at the back
in the
of his
White House
hair.
dining room,
Yeah.
attached to the Oval Office, and watched this unprecedented assault take place at the Capitol. We have testimony from several members of the president's White House staff establishing that President Trump refused entreaties from his closest advisors and family members to tell his supporters to stand down and leave the Capitol. Here's the testimony of President Trump's White House counsel, Pat Cipollone.
Fuck it, let's see how it plays out.
Cipollone.
Hey!
Generically say that I said, you know, people need to be told, there needs to be a public announcement fast that they need to leave the Capitol.
But I wasn't forceful enough.
Could you let us know
And nobody
approximately
did
when
that.
you said that?
Approximately when? Almost immediately after I found out people were getting into the Capitol or approaching the Capitol in a way that was violent.
You on the staff did not want people to leave the Capitol.
On the staff?
In the White House.
I can't think of anybody, you know, on that day who didn't want people to get out of the Capitol once the, you know, particularly once the violence started. No. I mean,
What about the president?
Yeah.
God, that
She said
fucking
the
room
staff.
hiss. Jesus Christ.
no answers.
No, I said in the White House.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I thought you said who else on the staff.
Am I allowed to answer
you
that?
wimp. Say it, you wimp.
Right?
I can't reveal communications, but obviously I think, you know,
Just it's
Mr.
everything
Cipollone's
is right
testimony is
there.
corroborated by multiple other White House staff members, including Cassidy
everybody
Hutchinson.
wanted everyone to
Here's Ms.
leave.
Hutchinson
What about the president?
describing
I don't know
what
how to
she
answer that
heard
question.
from
I
Mark
hate that
Meadows.
guy. God, I hate him.
He had said something to the effect of, you heard him, Pat. He doesn't want to do anything more. He doesn't think they're doing anything wrong.
A former White House employee with national security duties similarly recalled an exchange between Mr. Cipollone and Eric Hirschman about President Trump's inaction against the mob assault underway at the Capitol. Mr. Hirschman said something to Mr. Cipollone. He seemed to relay that, the president didn't want anything done.
We know that because he could have just tweeted something.
Throughout this period, some of the president's most important political allies, family members, and senior staff all begged him to tell his supporters to disperse and go home. They included Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, and other allies at Fox News, his son, Donald Trump Jr., the House Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, others in Congress, and officials in the cabinet and the executive branch. All of them made appeals to Donald Trump, which he rejected and he ignored. The Select Committee interviewed several people who were in the dining room with Donald Trump that afternoon, and every single one of these witnesses told us that he was watching the violent battles rage on television. He did not call his Secretary of Defense or the National Guard, the Chief of the Capitol Police, or the Chief of the Metropolitan.
Why didn't one of these people that really wanted to stop things, walk into his Twitter account, turn his Twitter account on?
I don't know if they have access to it.
Just record a thing.
I don't know how many people have access to his Twitter.
I imagine that there's got to be a couple communications people that have access to it.
Yeah, I don't know if they can just tweet on his behalf without his authorization without going to jail though. I don't know what those rules are.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
But at
why
this point,
one of these
why
not go to jail?
But here's if it's you, right? Like if I'm Mark Meadows, I'd be like, fuck it, I'll call a press conference. I'll walk out.
Yeah, right.
Right now.
Like these are all
what's the worst thing that happens to me?
Yeah, these are all important people.
Right.
These aren't not important people.
Right.
If this person walks out and says, "I'd like to talk to the people out on the
hey,
you got to stop.
You got to cut this shit out. I know I'm fired.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit.
Yeah, but you got to stop.
I actually care about.
Right?
Again, but you're fired in 2 weeks anyway.
Again, these people none of them went against his. None of them went against what he had to do.
No balls.
They all
on any
waited.
of them.
They all waited.
Where's your balls?
They all waited.
And to your knowledge, was the president in that
To your knowledge,
private
was
dining
Dr.
room
Teeth
the whole
there?
time that the attack on the Capitol was going on? Or did he ever go?
Was everybody in that
again,
room
only to
required
your
to wear
knowledge,
only
to the Oval
primary
Office,
colors?
To the White House Situation Room, anywhere else?
So that's my recollection. He was always in the dining room.
Yeah, what did they say, Mr. Meadows or the president? And all, during that brief encounter?
Who were you going to fight against, sir?
I think
everybody was watching the TV.
Who are you going to throw hands
I
with?
was going to talk. I was throw down.
When you talked to him on January 6th?
It's my understanding he was watching television.
When you were in the dining room in these discussions, was the violence at the Capitol visible on the screen on the television?
Yes.
As the president watched the bloody attack unfold on Fox News from his dining room, members of Congress and other government officials stepped into the gigantic leadership void created by the president's chilling and studied passivity that day. What you're about to see is previously
turns of
unseen
phrase.
footage of congressional leaders, both Republicans and Democrats, as they were taken to a secure location during the riot. You'll see how
dumpster.
everyone involved was working actively to stop the violence, to get federal law enforcement deployed to the scene, to put down the violence and secure the Capitol complex. Not just Democrats like Speaker Nancy Pelosi and House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, but Republicans like Vice President Pence, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Majority Whip John Thune, and countless other appointees across the administration. All of them did what President Trump was not doing, what he simply refused to do. Take a listen.
We're starting to get surrounded. They're taking the north front scaffolding. Unless we get more munitions, we're not going to be able to hold.
The door has been breached and people are gaining access into the Capitol.
But you know what? We have got to finish the proceedings, or else they would have had the complete victory.
Senator Schumer is at a secure location, and they're locked down in the Senate.
There has to be some way we can maintain the sense that people have that there's some security, or some confidence.
Nah, sorry, honey. That fucking left the building.
And that we can elect the
Nah,
president of the
man.
United States.
I like that she's like, still, we'll govern
Did we
down
go
here.
back into session?
Good for her. Like, let's go govern down here. The room doesn't matter.
But now apparently everybody on the floor is putting on tear gas masks to prepare for a breach. Well, I'm trying to get more information.
They're putting on their
tear gas masks.
We need an area for the House members. They're all walking over now through the tunnels.
And I'm going to drink another whole bottle of vodka.
We have some senators who are still in their hideaway. They need massive personnel now. Can you get the Maryland National Guard to come too?
I have something to say, Mr. Secretary. I'm going to call the mayor of Washington, D.C. right now and see what other outreach she has to other police departments, as Leader Hoyer has mentioned.
Get him up! He wants to go! Get him up! Hold up! Get him up!
Hi, Governor. This is Nancy. Governor, I don't know if you have been approached about the Virginia National Guard. Mr. Hoyer was speaking to Governor Hogan, but I still think you probably need the okay of the federal government in order to come into another jurisdiction. Thank you. Oh my gosh, they're just breaking windows. They're doing all kinds of. It's really that they said somebody was shot. It was just horrendous, and all at the instigation of the President of the United States.
Right, good.
Okay, thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Good. Fucking call it what it is.
If you don't mind, I'd like to stay in touch. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Virginia Guard has been.
How calm is she?
I'm just talking to Governor Northam. And what he
You know,
said
if
is
like that's
they
Nancy
sent
Pelosi.
200,
Like women get called
state
out all the
police
time, right? Like I just
and
want to
a
say this. Like
unit
women get called out all the time as like, oh, like women are going to be the weaker sex. They're going to be the ones that get too emotional. They're going to be the ones that like, you know, all this fucking nonsense. And like, here's fucking Nancy Pelosi, who is personally being singled out more than any other person. Probably.
Sorry, hold on a second. Go ahead.
More than almost any other person on the floor. Nancy Pelosi is being intentionally singled out, right? Like if those fucking lunatics caught Nancy Pelosi, they'd have fucking skinned her alive.
They'd have killed her.
They'd have absolutely killed her.
They'd have killed her.
And what is her first concern? All right, let's govern down here. Can we govern down here? We can't govern down here. Let me make some phone calls. At no point is she out of control. At no point is she emotional.
You're right.
Like, I just want to point out the fucking rampant misogyny that like underlies such a huge undercurrent of why we even had Trump.
Yeah.
We had Trump because
that's
we were
one
a
of the major
misogynist.
reasons,
Like a misogynist voting public.
Absolutely. Sorry, accidentally.
No, way to refind it so quickly.
Thank you.
She's calm as you can be, man.
Yeah.
All kinds of, it's really that they said somebody was shot. It was just horrendous, and all at the instigation of the President of the United States. Okay, thank you, Governor. I appreciate what you're doing, and if you don't mind, I'd like to stay in touch. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Virginia Guard has been called in.
You know, I'm just talking to Governor Northam, and what he said is they sent 200 state police and a unit of the National Guard. They're breaking windows and going in, obviously ransacking our offices and all the rest of that. That's nothing. The concern we have about personal harm, personal safety is it just transcends everything. But the fact is, on any given day, they're breaking the law in many different ways. And quite frankly, much of it at the instigation of the President of the United States. And now, if he could at least somebody.
Yeah, why don't you get the president to tell them to leave the Capitol, Mr. Attorney General, in your law enforcement responsibility? A public statement, they should all leave.
What did he say?
Boom.
What did he say?
Right.
What was his fucking answer?
Jesus
Jesus,
cannot
what a
be
shit
just
show.
we're waiting for so-and-so. We need them there now, whoever you got.
You have,
Okay.
you also have troops, this is Steny Hoyer, troops.
Okay, so we have a little
Fort
bit of time
McNair,
to make that decision.
Andrews Air Force Base,
All right,
other military bases.
thank you.
We
Thanks,
need
Paul. Bye.
active duty National Guard.
How soon in the future can you have the place evacuated, pulled, cleaned out?
I don't want to speak for the leadership that's going to be responsible for executing the operation, so I'm not going to say that because they're on the ground and they're the
Well, just pretend for a moment it was the Pentagon or the White House or some other entity that was under siege. And let me say, you can logistically get people there as you make the plan.
$4:00, man.
We're trying to figure out how we can get this job done today. We talked to Mitch about it earlier. He's not in the room right now, but he was with us earlier and said, we want to expedite this, and hopefully they could confine it to just one complaint, Arizona, and then we could vote, and that would be, then just move forward with the rest of the state.
She's still trying to govern, man.
My wish is to do it at the Capitol. What we are being told very directly is it's going to take days for the Capitol to be okay again. We've gotten a very bad report about the condition of the House floor with defecation and all that kind of thing as well. I don't think that that's hard to clean up, but I do think it is more from a security standpoint of making sure that everybody...
She's still trying to govern, man. I know. She's still like, democracy still matters.
I just got off with the Vice President.
And I got off with the Vice President-elect, so I'll tell her.
Okay. But what we left the conversation with...
Hey,
'cause
Dick's
he
over
said
there. That's Dick.
He had the
Yeah.
impression from Mitch that Mitch wants to get everybody back to do it there.
Yes.
I said, well, we're getting a counterpoint that is, we could take time to clean up the poo-poo that they're making all over the, literally and figuratively in the Capitol. And that it may take days to get
I
back.
like that they have Triscuits. I'm glad they had Triscuits. It's nice to have snacks.
It is. Gotta have snacks.
The U.S. Capitol Police, he just informed me what you will hear through official channels. Paul Irving, your Sergeant at Arms, will inform you that their best information is that they believe that the House and the Senate will be able to reconvene in roughly an hour.
Good news.
Your Sergeant at Arms will be in touch about the process for getting members back into the building.
Admittedly, I'd have gone home early. but
What's that?
I'd have gone home early. I mean, I'd
Yeah.
have been like, I'm going
I'd be
home.
like,
I'm
this has
going
been a
home
weird
early.
day.
Come on.
I'm calling it.
It feels...
I like that they were just like, no, fuck that. We're doing it. Because you didn't want us to?
Yeah.
In this
Fuck
video,
that.
you just saw Senator Chuck Schumer urging Acting Attorney General Jeff Rosen to get President Trump
Well, that's
to
what Mitt
call off
Romney
the
came
rioters.
back and said, too.
Of course,
Yeah, like, well, this is gonna
Acting
happen
AG
today,
Rosen
you
did
know?
take action to defend the government, as did many other officials, but congressional leadership recognized on a bipartisan basis that President Trump was the only person who could get the mob to end its violent siege of the Congress, leave the Capitol, and go home. Here's Senator McConnell speaking after January 6th about how President Trump abandoned his duties and failed to do his job.
It was obvious that only President Trump could end this. He was the only one.
But I changed my mind because it's not politically expedient
Former
anymore.
aides publicly begged
Making
him to
lots
do
of
so.
money. Because I'm the worst person that's ever
Loyal
been born.
ally.
Schmuckers,
President did not act swiftly.
Bartles and James wine coolers are
not do
among
his
the best
job.
wine coolers.
He didn't take
Country
steps
time
so
lemonade.
federal law could be faithfully executed and order restored.
In Kentucky, it's one sentence a month. We can't read,
In the
we
midst
can't write.
of this violent
You just wanna
chaos,
grab
Kevin
his cheeks
McCarthy
and force
implored
the rest
Donald
of
Trump to tell his supporters in the mob to leave the Capitol. And when that didn't work, McCarthy called Trump's adult children to try to get them to intercede with Trump to call off the insurrectionary violence. In our prior hearings, we showed you a description of what McCarthy told Republican Congresswoman Jamie Herrera Butler about his conversation with Trump during the violence. Another witness, Mick Mulvaney, President Trump's former chief of staff, has also come forward and corroborated her shocking account.
I asked Kevin McCarthy, who's the Republican leader, about this, and he said he called Donald Trump. He finally got through to Donald Trump, and he said, "You have got to get on TV. You've got to get on Twitter. You've got to call these people off." You know what the president said to him? This is as it's happening. He said, "Well, Kevin, these aren't my people. These are Antifa." And Kevin responded and said, "No, they're your people. They literally just came through my office windows, and my staff are running for cover. I mean, they're running for their lives. You need to call them off." And the president's response to Kevin, to me, was chilling. He said, "Well, Kevin, I guess they're just more upset about the election, theft than you are." And that's, you've seen widespread reports of Kevin McCarthy and the president having basically a swearing conversation. That's when the swearing commenced, because the president was basically saying, "Nah, I'm okay with this."
I had a conversation at some point.
Why don't they get McCarthy? Why can't they get these? Why can't they subpoena McCarthy?
I think they did.
Well, I think the problem is that he would just grandstand.
Yeah.
And they don't want
Or
to.
just plead the fifth. That would be pointless.
Retold about how he called and asked the president to get them to stop, and the president told him something along the lines of, "Kevin, maybe these people are just more angry about this than you are, maybe more upset." I had the conversation similar to that with Kevin in the day to week after the riot.
And we know how Kevin McCarthy described President Trump's conduct, both in public and in private.
The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress.
Yeah, you don't believe it anymore.
He should
That's
have immediately
weird.
denounced the mob.
These sound bites now, if Trump runs again,
These facts require immediate
just
action.
crush him with it.
President Trump.
How do you not
Accept
just
his share of
crush him?
responsibility, quell the brewing unrest, and ensure President-elect Biden is able to successfully begin his term.
But let me be very clear to all of you, and I've been very clear to the president. He bears responsibilities for his words and actions. No ifs, ands, or buts. I asked him personally today, does he hold responsibility for what happened? Does he feel bad about what happened? He told me he does have some responsibility for what happened. And he needs to acknowledge that.
2:24 p.m., knowing the deadly riot was now bearing down on his own vice president, President Trump composed and sent a tweet attacking Vice President Pence, accusing him of cowardice for not unilaterally rejecting Electoral College votes for Joe Biden and simply handing Trump the presidency. The impact of that tweet was foreseeable and predictable. It further inflamed the mob, which was chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," and provoked them to even greater violence. This deliberate decision to further enrage the mob against Vice President Pence cannot be justified by anything that President Trump might have thought about the election. The tweet came precisely at the time Pence's Secret Service detail was most seriously concerned for the vice president's physical safety. We've obtained new documents from the Secret Service, real-time chats that underscore the threat they knew the vice president would be facing because of the president's escalating incitement of the mob.
What about?
After Trump's tweet, one agent in the Secret Service's intelligence division immediately warned, POTUS just tweeted about Pence.
Oh, well,
probably not going to be
dead.
good for Pence.
If anyone needs me, I'll be drastically
Another
understating
agent
things.
reported the dramatic impact of Trump's anti-Pence tweet on his followers. POTUS said he lacked courage. Over 24,000 likes in under 2 minutes. Employees at Twitter were nervously monitoring
where are you guys
the
at
situation.
on our fucking
They knew
social
certain
media, right?
Twitter users were rioting at the Capitol and tweeting about it at the same time.
I'm going to
As
post
the afternoon
Adam
progressed, the
Kinzinger's
company
guns on our
detected
thing.
a
You guys
surge
better
in
like it
violent
2,400
hashtags on the
times.
platform, including lines of lethal incitement like "execute Mike Pence." Listen to this former Twitter employee, Anika Navaroli, who first came to the committee anonymously, but has now bravely agreed to be named because she wants to speak out about the magnitude of the threats facing our people.
Wow. Cool.
And you were also seeing content on the platform at that time that was threatening towards the vice president.
She's still there.
Hashtag.
Elon's going to fire her.
Yes. They were literally calling for his execution.
As this tweet was going out.
Yes. And after, in response to this tweet too, because I think as many of Donald Trump's tweets did, it again fanned the flames, and it was individuals who were already constructing gallows, who were already willing and able and wanting to execute someone and looking for someone to be killed. Now the individual who has called upon them to begin this coup is now pointing the finger at another individual while they're ready to do this.
Here's a small sample of the reactions that President Trump's Fan the Flames tweet provoked among Capitol rioters in real time.
What percentage of the crowd is going to the Capitol?
100%. It is spread like wildfire that Pence has betrayed us and everybody's marching on the Capitol, all million of us. It's insane.
For Donald Trump. Accuse him of counting accurately. I said no one would ever accuse him of counting accurately. A million of us?
Yeah, counting's his whole problem.
That's the word. I keep hearing reports that Miles has screwed us.
Caliente.
Between 2:30 and 2:35,
Nobody's ever thought it was Caliente when Mike Pence screwed them.
Tweet, thousands of rioters
The worst 30
overran the
seconds of your
line
life.
that the Metropolitan Police Force's civil disturbance
is he buying him
unit
dinner too?
was holding on the west side of the Capitol.
His mother
this was
holding
the
me
first
down?
time in the history of the Metropolitan Police Department that a security line like
In his
that
eye.
had ever been
30
broken.
seconds. Is it a
President
threesome
Trump's
of Ben
conduct
Shapiro?
that day was so shameful and so outrageous that it prompted numerous members of the White House staff and other Trump appointees to resign. In prior hearings, you've heard Deputy National Security Advisor Matt Pottinger and Deputy White House Press Secretary Sarah Matthews explain why they felt compelled to resign on that day. Since then, we've spoken to more high-ranking
was two
officials,
people out
like
of
President Trump's
like
envoy to
400
Northern
or
Ireland and
something.
former
It's
Chief of
ridiculous.
Staff Mick Mulvaney and Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao, who resigned after the 6th in protest of Trump's misconduct and to dissociate themselves
I think
from
you
his
mean
role in the violence.
I think
Take a
you
listen
mean
to what they
Coco
had to say.
Chow. Thank you very much.
Shit.
I was stunned by.
I didn't say
I know.
it.
I know, man. It's not yours.
I didn't say it.
Stunned by
I know.
The president's apparent indifference to the violence. Now,
Why
it's
were
not
you stunned by that? What is not in keeping with his character?
It's literally that's his whole persona.
Right.
to be the sort of leader that the nation needed.
How stupid are you that you thought he was the con?
However, they
misspelled
occurred.
Coco.
Were shocking. And it was something that, as I mentioned in my statement, that I could not put aside. And at a particular point,
Well, your husband did.
events were
Yeah, your
such
husband seemed to
that
find a place
He
to
doesn't
put
give
it
a
aside.
shit.
impossible for
Yep.
me
He
to
stuffed it
continue,
under one of his cheeks
given
or
my
whatever.
personal
Moved right the fuck on.
values and my
I don't
I came
give a
as an immigrant to
shit.
this country. I believe in this
Schmuckers,
country.
raspberry.
I believe in a peaceful transfer of power. I believe in democracy.
Do you?
And so
Well, I didn't believe in it
I was
the entire time he was
decision
contesting
I didn't
the
believe
election.
it like up until January 5th. Cowards.
When security
pieces of
assistants
shit.
began to arrive at the Capitol and the tide turned against the insurrection, President Trump finally gave his painfully belated instruction at 4:17
At
p.m.
gunpoint.
So after
Yeah,
multiple
right?
hours of rioting,
And I said
more
I
than
love you
100
guys.
I
serious
love the one
injuries
that looks like he's
suffered
at
by
gunpoint.
our
That's my
law enforcement
favorite.
officers, the crowd
looks so
finally began to
uncomfortable.
disperse.
Best.
Listen carefully to what they
I love
said
the outtakes,
as they
too.
decided to leave the Capitol.
When he's like yelling. I can't say that.
Delivering the president's message.
Isn't that guy in jail?
Yeah, his dude's in jail.
Yeah, eating a vegan meal in
Idiot.
jail. Eating an organic vegan meal in jail.
Says go home. He says go home.
Yeah, he said to go home.
Maybe
Finally,
type something
at
so they don't have to
6:01,
listen to it in a
President
crowd.
Trump tweeted again, not to condemn the mass violence in any way, but rather to excuse and glorify it. Significantly, he made it clear that he considered the violence perfectly foreseeable and predictable. Check it out. These are the things
Check it, yo.
and events that happen
What? Chickadee
when a
chick.
sacred
Check it.
landslide election
You better
victory
check yourself
is
before
so
you wreck your
unceremoniously,
capital.
viciously stripped away
Well, too
from
late.
great
Sorry,
patriots
Rex.
who have been badly,
They already
unfairly
poo-pooed
treated
on
for
the
so
floor.
long. These are the things that happen, he said,
So what happens when you
giving
eat
the
too many
whole game
Triscuits.
away.
Too
Trump
many
was telling
chicken and
us
a
that the
biscuit
vice
and you
president,
rip
the
out a
Congress, and
juice
all
on
the
the floor.
injured and wounded cops, some of whom are with us today, got what was coming to us. According to Trump, January 6th should not be a day that lives in shame and infamy in our history, but rather in glory. Remember this day forever, he wrote proudly, as if he were talking about D-Day or the Battle of Yorktown. Trump did nothing to stop the deadly violence for obvious reasons. He thought it was all justified, he incited it, and he supported it.
Would it have been possible at any moment for the president to walk down to the podium and
Yes.
briefing room and talk to the nation at any time between when you first gave him that advice at 2 o'clock and 4:17 when the video statement? Would that have been possible?
Would it have been possible?
Yes.
Yes, it would have been possible.
If the president had wanted to make a statement and address the American people, he could have been on camera almost instantly. And conversely, the White House press corps has offices that are located directly behind the briefing room. And so if he had wanted to make an address from the Oval Office, we could have assembled the White House press corps probably in a matter of minutes to get them into the Oval for him to do an on-camera address.
Well, blew that one.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, nothing in law or fact could justify the president's failure to act.
And I assume you also would agree the president has a particular obligation to take care that the laws be faithfully executed.
That is one of the president's obligations, correct.
Mr. Chairman, in numerous places, our Constitution strongly opposes insurrection and rebellion. Article 1 gives Congress the power to call
All right.
forth the militia
What is
to
with the guy
suppress
behind Mr.
insurrections.
Raskin?
Section 3 of the 14th Amendment disqualified
he looks
from
like
holding
raised
federal
from
and
the
state
dead
office
Stephen
anyone
King.
For
who has
real,
sworn an oath
right?
to
For
defend
real,
the
right?
Constitution,
Yeah.
but
He looks like
betrays
put
it
Stephen
by
King in one of
engaging
those like
insurrection
mop
or
ringers
rebellion.
Yeah.
and
It
ring
was
them out a
President
little.
Lincoln,
Like, look at his
the start of the
deadlights.
Civil War in 1861, who best explained why democracy rejects insurrection. Insurrection, he said, is a war upon the first principle of popular government, the rights of the people. American democracy belongs to all the American people, not to a single man. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
I yield back too.
Gentleman
I
yields
know,
back.
I yield back.
During this committee's first hearing
over
in July
almost.
of last year, our
10
witnesses
minutes.
were 4 police officers who helped repel the riots of
Did
January
they all
6th.
speak? They all speaked, right?
We
all
asked
spoke,
them
right?
what they
all
hoped
spoke.
to see the committee accomplish over the course of our investigation. Officer Gunnell wanted to know why the rioters were made to believe that the election process was rigged. Officer Fanone asked us to look into the actions and activities that resulted in the day's events. Officer Hodges was concerned about whether anyone in power had a role. Officer Dunn put it simply, get to the bottom of what happened. We've worked for more than a year to get those answers. We've conducted more than 1,000 interviews and depositions. We received and reviewed hundreds of thousands of pages of documents.
Jesus.
Thanks to the tireless work
exhausted
of our
for you.
members
That
and
seems like a lot of work.
investigators, we have left no doubt, none, that Donald Trump led an effort to upend American democracy that directly resulted in the violence of January 6th. He tried to take away the voice of the American people in choosing their president and replace the will of the voters with his will to remain in power.
And crazily, he's
He
going to
is
run
the
in 2
one
years.
person at the center of the story
Because
of
the
what
world doesn't even make
happened
sense
on January
anymore.
6th. So we want to hear from him. The committee needs to do everything in our power to tell the most complete story possible and provide recommendations to help ensure nothing like January 6th ever happens again. We need to be fair and thorough and gain a full context for the evidence we've obtained. But the need for this committee to hear from Donald Trump goes beyond our fact-finding. This is a question about accountability to the American people. He must be accountable. He is required to answer for his actions. He's required to answer to those police officers who put their lives and bodies on the line to defend our democracy. He's required to answer to those millions of Americans whose votes he wanted to throw out as part of his scheme to remain in power. And whatever is underway to ensure this accountability under law, this committee will demand a full accounting to every American person of the events of January 6th. So it is our obligation to seek Donald Trump's testimony. There's precedent in American history for Congress to compel the testimony of a president. There's also precedent for presidents to provide testimony and documentary evidence to congressional investigators. We also recognize that a subpoena to a former president is a serious and extraordinary action. That's why we want to take this step in full view of the American people, especially because the subject matter at issue is so important to the American people and the stakes are so high for our future and our democracy. And so I recognize the Vice Chair, Ms. Cheney of Wyoming, to offer a motion.
Mr. Chairman, pursuant to today's notice, I send to the desk a committee resolution and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
Committee Resolution 1, resolved that the chairman be and is hereby directed to subpoena Donald J. Trump for documents and testimony in connection with the January 6th attack.
He won't show up. He's not going to do it.
Pursuant to Section 5C4 of House Resolution 503 and Clause 2M of Rule 11 of the Rules of the House of Representatives.
The gentlewoman from Wyoming is recognized on her resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, our committee now has sufficient information to answer many of the critical questions posed by Congress at the outset. We have sufficient information to consider criminal referrals for multiple individuals and to recommend a range of legislative proposals to guard against another January 6th. But a key task remains. We must seek the testimony under oath of January 6th central player. More than 30 witnesses in our investigation have invoked their Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, and several of those did so specifically in response to questions about their dealings with Donald Trump directly. Here are a few examples. This is Roger Stone with Oath Keepers at the Willard Hotel on the morning of January 6th. And here is Mr. Stone testifying before our committee.
In his penguin outfit.
Wah, 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 wah. Cell phone on either January 5th or January 6th?
Once again, on advice of counsel, I will assert my Fifth Amendment right to respectfully decline to answer your question.
This is General Michael Flynn walking with Oath Keepers on December 12th, 2020. And here is General Flynn's testimony before our committee.
Did you, General Flynn, talk to President Trump at any point on January 6, 2021?
The 5th.
Here is John Eastman,
Jesus Christ.
fraudulently instructing tens of thousands of angry protesters
God.
that the vice president could change the election outcome on
Just
January 6th.
boil them all.
Later on this same day, Dr. Eastman acknowledged in writing that Donald Trump knew what he was attempting was illegal. Here is John Eastman testifying before our committee.
Did President Trump authorize you to discuss publicly your January 4th, 2021 conversation with him? Fifth. So is it your position that you can discuss in the media direct conversations you had with the President of the United States, but you will not discuss those same conversations with this committee? Fifth.
Here is Jeff Clark, who conspired with Donald Trump to corrupt the Department of Justice. President
can't
Trump
tuck his shirt
wanted
into
to
his
appoint
jacket.
Jeff Clark as acting
Jesus, look
Attorney
at that
General.
thing.
And as you can see in this call log we obtained
Looks like
from
a
the
Koopa
National
Troopa.
Archives, he did so. And here is Mr. Clark testifying before our committee.
Mr. Clark, when did you first talk directly with President Trump?
5th.
Mr. Clark, did you discuss with President Trump allegations of fraud in the 2020 election?
5th.
Other
They don't even
witnesses have
say
also
it
gone to
fully.
enormous
But make 'em
lengths
say
to
it.
avoid testifying
It's
about
like a
their dealings
filibuster.
with
You got to
Donald
say
Trump.
it or it doesn't
Right?
count.
It
Steve
should.
Bannon has been tried and convicted by a jury of his peers for contempt of Congress. He is scheduled to be sentenced for this crime later this month.
Good.
Criminal
Good.
proceedings regarding Peter Navarro continue. And Mark Meadows, Donald Trump's former chief of staff, has refused to testify based upon executive privilege. The committee's litigation with him continues. Mr. Chairman, at some point, the Department of Justice may well unearth the facts that these and other witnesses are currently concealing. But our duty today is to our country and our children and our Constitution. We are obligated to seek answers directly from the man who set this all in motion. And every American is entitled to those answers, so we can act now to protect
Or
our
forever hold our
republic.
peace.
So this afternoon, I am offering this resolution that the committee direct the chairman to issue a subpoena for relevant documents and testimony under oath from Donald John Trump
What?
in connection with the January 6th attack
bitch.
on the
Oh, I
United
see it.
States Capitol.
Boom,
Thank you, Mr.
bitch.
Chairman.
Get out the way. Get out the way,
Young
bitch.
lady
Get
yields
out
back.
the way.
If there's no further debate, the
Guess who will
question
not show up?
is on agreeing to the resolution. Those in favor will say aye.
Aye. I know
Those
you didn't
opposed
care,
is
but I
no.
said it anyway.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I request a recorded vote.
I fucking
Recorded vote
everybody's
is
got to
requested.
say it again.
The clerk will
Boom.
call the roll.
I love it.
Ms. Cheney.
Aye.
Ms. Cheney, aye. Ms. Lofgren.
Aye.
Ms. Lofgren, aye. Mr. Schiff.
Aye.
Mr. Schiff, aye. Mr. Aguilar.
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar, aye. Mrs. Murphy.
Aye.
Mrs. Murphy, aye. Mr. Raskin.
Aye.
Mr. Raskin, aye. Mrs. Luria.
Aye.
Mrs. Luria, aye. Mr. Kinzinger.
Kinzinger, aye.
Mr. Kinzinger, aye.
Kinzinger, aye.
Mr.
Those
Chairman.
are rules.
Mr. Chairman, aye.
What is that?
The clerk will report the vote.
Sorry, I was
Mr.
looking
Chairman,
at my
on
muscles.
this vote, there are 9 ayes.
I was scheduling
0
my
noes.
CrossFit class
can't-
for tomorrow.
Can't stop staring
Resolution
at
is
myself.
agreed to. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
All right. It's
All right,
over.
that's it.
That's it.
So yeah, big. I mean, it's not going to happen.
It's
right?
not going to happen.
There's a
Well,
0% chance.
If he does show up, he's going to be surrounded by people who will tell him just plead the fifth again.
Yeah.
So he's going to plead the fifth, just like he does when he goes to do any of the other bullshit that he does.
I don't. I
right?
think it'll all get caught up in legislation. The thing is that this whole thing ends in November.
Yeah.
Like so,
You're right.
Because the
Regardless,
midterms,
it ends in November,
the-
regardless.
yeah, unless by some miracle of miracles, the Democrats can keep control of the House in November, but they can't.
Yeah.
I don't think
it's
that
going to
they'll
be
able
real.
to.
I don't think it will be.
So this whole thing is over in November. So it's really just
Yeah.
an opportunity for them to be like, you didn't fucking show.
Yeah.
You had an opportunity to be transparent and you didn't.
And expect something like this but they're going to do it for Joe Biden. So.
Yeah, right?
All right, we have 10 more minutes of show to record, so we got to go, guys. Thanks for joining us tonight. Thanks for hanging out.
Sorry, Restream didn't work,
sorry
guys.
it didn't work out tonight. We tried, but and when I got it, I did get a message like 10 minutes ago that they fixed
That
their
was
fucking
working?
servers. So
Fuck you, Restream.
It's fixed now. So sorry it was only on YouTube. We're sorry, guys. We're not going to be streaming next week. No stream next week.
Nope.
But the following will be back. So come check us out Thursday nights. We always record at 9 o'clock. We always record at like 7:30, and then we do our live stream at 9. So that's Central Time. Come check us out. Come hang out. But we got to bounce, everybody. Have a great night. Catch you guys in 2 weeks. Peace.
Later. What?
So long, everybody. Bye. I'm gonna do the stop streaming. Should I hit that, Ian? Is that what I should hit?
It'll end it immediately. So
Is that good or bad?
I mean, sure. It's something we have not used much. So feel free.
Should I do it?
Fucking do it.
Should I do it, Tom?
Do it, man.
I'm gonna do it.
Smash that stop streaming button.
I won't see you next week.
Smash like or subscribe.
Ian's going to run the stream next week.
Ian's going to run
by
the stream
himself.
next week by himself.
Dance Dance Revolution speed runs.
Bye.
Guitar Hero.